It's a cruel fate for love to fall apart. It's a switch blade drawn across my heart, and I don't wanna think what I'm thinking. And I don't wanna fall, but I'm falling. Deep, deep, deep in the dark. Deep, deep, deep in the dark. Fires keep burning. Desires keep turning black. It's not over till I say so. It's not over till I'm ready to let it go. Go till I'm ready to let it go. Go till I'm ready to let it. I lie low, but in truth, I'm biding my time. Gonna mark what I choose, gonna sharpen my tongue. And I want to be free, but I need you. And I'm not gonna beg, so I tell you. It's not over till I say so. It's not over till I'm ready to let it go. Till I'm ready to let it go. Till I'm ready to let it go.
I'll challenge you, I'll challenge him, I'll challenge everyone, I am a king. I'll challenge statuses, I'll challenge me. Step to my game, you got no time to sleep. I run in the wind, I run in the snow. Outwork them all, best expect me to blow. I've tasted the low, I've tasted the highs. Best I ever did was to not give it time, I just stayed on my grind. What you gonna do when they come for you? We just go hard. What you gonna do when you lose out? You just go hard. What you gonna do when they come for you? We just go hard. What you gonna do when you fall down? You just go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Go hard. standing in a crowded room, but it feels so empty. I'm haunted by my thoughts of you, and it's killing me, killing me. I'm trying hard to see the light, but the dark knows me by name. I shout your name into the night, 'cause every day I wanna be with you. I wanna be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. And I know it's all my fault. I feel the guilt and the shame. Tried to make a deal with the devil, but he just turned me away. So what can I do to get back to you? I run through the fire and bathe in the brimstone. Visions of your face, it keeps me away. I have no peace, this pain won't leave me alone. No, I'm trying hard to see the light, but the dark knows me by name. I shout your name into the night, 'cause every day I wanna be with you. I wanna be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. I sell my soul just to be with you. Hey, what I'm doing? Hey, getting right to it. Shit, the money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop. Nah, won't stop. Shit, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. I had to deal with the cards dealt, hey, when no one's helped. When it's time for action, headlines and captions. Just imagine all of the hours that I put in running and gunning the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had a losing streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. Hey, what I'm doing? Hey, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, can't stop. Nah, won't stop. Shit, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we
my moves. Early bird gets the worm, I don't got time to snooze. I'm not in the frat, but every year I still pay my dues. Do it for mama dudes. Wanna get a house with a pool and an amazing view, so she could watch her son do what he wanna do. Cause lately I've been ballin' like an alley-oop.
We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just tryna maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. We ain't in the same league, not even the same game. Going all in, I'm just tryna maintain. Y'all don't want me to win, I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face.
You say you're looking, keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, but never find someone who's fine. Keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find another me. Try and try, never find. Try and try, never find. What is missing when you've been? Tell me something I can hear. Body screaming. You won't admit that you want me close. I know you need, you know I know. When you're with me, you feel it the most on the low, low, low. You say you're looking, keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, but never find someone who's fine. Keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around with. You try and try, never find another me.
I just wanna lay here. Don't know what I'm waiting for. Don't know what I'm aiming for. I've just gotta feel it. Late night, yeah, my head be spinning around. Yeah, I was once lost, but baby, you got me feeling found. It's time to show me how it's done. This is the go up. Come on, it's time to have some fun. Yeah, that's right. We're gonna break it down. We giving big love. We're gonna show 'em how it's done. That's right. We're gonna show 'em. I've got to keep fighting. Strike hard, I'm like lightning. It's my life, I rewrite it. Yeah, I'm gonna show ya. Late night, yeah, my head be spinning around. Yeah, I was once lost, but baby, you got me feeling found. It's time to show 'em how it's done. This is the go up. It's time to show 'em how it's done. Yeah, this is the glow up. Strike hard, I'm like lightning. It's time to have some fun. Yeah, it's my life, that's right. And I've got to keep fighting. We're giving big love. We're gonna show 'em how it's done. That's right. Come on, this is our time, and we're gonna show 'em.
Do you feel what the eyes can't see? You hear it calling way down deep. Trust your heart, it'll keep you true. This world expects so much from you. From the dark out into the light, it'll come in the middle of the night. You were raised in the sacred place. Evil runs when it sees your face. Throne calls your name, you know it's your time. just define. I'll empty your mind, 'cause you want me to. I'm so twisted, you're addicted. I feel your pain, 'cause you want me to. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. So close the doors, let me in, let me taste the darkness in you. No one serves me like you. You ask me to slay you, to burn you, to haunt you, so you feel. So do you feel me now? I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. 'Cause I can't give you everything you want. Make you feel I'm so good for you. Love being bad for you. 'Cause I can't give everything you desire. I'm so good for you. I'm so bad for you. I thought I told you once, but I'll remind you. There's certain things you're not supposed to do. I saw you in my dreams and you were falling. No way to know if it will all come true. Let this be a war. I want it. But let this be a warning, warning, warning. A warning, warning. A warning, warning, warning. A warning. But let this be a warning, warning, warning. A warning, warning. Warning, warning, warning. A warning. But let this be a time and time again.
I had to deal with the cards dealt. Hey, when no one's help. When it's time for action, headlines and captions. Just imagine all of the hours that I put in running and gunning the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had to lose the streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game, Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, can't stop, nah.
this be a Welcome everyone to match number 4 of the PCS playoffs, where we will see PSG for the first time in our summer playoffs go up against a currently victorious DCG who took their win over the Chiefs in their previous game, should I say. And of course it is brought to you by Riot Games and Carry Live. And now, lastly, there is a PCS Facebook page that you definitely should check out. Has a lot of information about upcoming games, past games, and current games. So definitely something to look at. And now it is me, Vestian, once again, and alongside me it's Shock.
Yep, we are here once again for our final match of PCS Plus week number 1. And it should be a really interesting one, PSG taking on DCG. It's hard to tell what exactly is going to happen in this one because if you cast your mind back to last split, it was DCG who led the series 2-0 and it looked pretty much all but over. And then PSG just reverse swept them. And even if you look at this split, I think DCG, they've had some of the highest highs of any team, just absolutely stomping some of the matches, but also they've lost a lot of games that they probably shouldn't have, so you never know which side of DCG is going to come out. And I'm curious, do you think it is just going to be that kind of PSG stomp where they are just cleaner overall, or do you think DCG is likely to get a game here or there?
I think DCG can perhaps get a game if they play well enough through Mission, and Mission gets himself enough an advantage, but it does feel a lot harder now that PSG have upgraded that mid laner with Maple. Now, the playoff bracket, of course, today will be that match number 4, PSG versus DCG. Next week, we will see the LCO teams once again join us against both Frank and CFO. I mean, what do you think about the game coming up, though? Obviously, you just touched on it that I think there is ways that DCG can win, but ultimately it does feel like PSG are the cleaner team, and so you'd expect in the ultimate result of the series for PSG just to win from that, but do you think DCG take a game, and if so, how many?
I think it's very, very possible DCG take a game. I think I would definitely give the series, though, to PSG pretty much unquestionably. I don't think DCG have it in them to play 3 games that are clean enough to take down PSG. I'll probably give it to PSG 3-1. I think DCG do manage to pick a win up here and there, just because I have a feeling that DCG will actually get ahead in the early game in a lot of the game. You know, I wouldn't be surprised at all to have their average gold at 15 be higher than PSG, but I really just don't. I don't see them getting it across the line, but maybe they get lucky once. So overall, PSG 3-1.
Yeah. I think this should just be a PSG 3-0.
It probably should, yeah.
Yesterday, I thought J-Team should take it 3-0, and so my opinion does not matter. Obviously, the men on your screen here from PSG Talon, a very formidable force. Jinjia, RJ having a very good split for themselves. We're going to pan over to Maple, who, at the later half of the split, looked to be one of the strongest mid laners, possibly alongside Minji, who kind of fell off in his last series. But I think ultimately, when you look at this series, both Mission and Maple have played a lot of that Tristana versus Jace, but it's Maple who's been really favoriting that Jace, and they will have blue, well, they have side selection, and I believe they've taken blue side, which means they do have access to that Jace if it is going to be left open during the champ select. And I suspect if it is left open, they will just first pick it. Now, a question I have is if Kai'Sa's going to be left open, because it has been left open a fair amount already, but it does feel like the answer has been that Zeri, and while not so much success was found from J-Team trying to look for that answer, it does feel like Wako's a whole different beast when he is able to play those team fighting late game 80 carries, and I think it might just do a little bit better here in this series.
I think if PSG do end up on the red side, that they probably will leave the Kai'Sa up and then have Wako match it with the Zeri, but I think I would expect at least DCG to be the ones to ban it away, because I wouldn't have as much confidence in Criscada's Zeri to be able to match up against Waku's Kai'Sa, who's obviously very strong on the champ as well. And it seems everyone in the playoffs here does prefer that blue side. I think it gives you a lot more flexibility in the draft, just especially around your first 3 bans. And then, of course, that first pick. And maybe the red side counters just aren't as strong. If there were a team to pick red side, you almost would have thought it was J-Team yesterday, but they didn't want it. They took the blue. And game number 1, of course. We'll see if DCG use this red side last pick to good effect.
One thing I want to say is that so far in the playoffs, the red side actually has a far superior win rate overall. Obviously, the Chiefs winning on red side and then losing after that 2 games on red side. Bliss also losing on the blue side, and DCG picking up wins, you know, constantly. And yesterday as well, 3 wins in a row there for the red side. So at the moment, at least in the playoffs, everyone's selecting blue side, but red side having a far better win rate. I wonder if that's something that might see the sort of side selection swap as we go deeper into the playoff run.
Could be. You wonder how much of it is just because of the strength of the teams. And also that, of course, if the loser gets to pick again and they continue to pick the same side, sort of likely to lose again, especially now that that's kind of been a bit more figured out. But we'll take a look at our 2 80 carries here. And Wako's stats are pretty impressive, of course, but Criscada, he's actually got a really high damage percent, which does surprise me because he shares the team with Mission, and Mission's been putting out a whole lot of damage as well.
Yeah, I think isolated deaths there doesn't really tell the whole story for Wako, because a lot of the times he does die in that 2v2, which does not count as an isolated death. And so I think his isolated deaths, if that were to count, would be much similar to that of Criscada's. So I don't think it's all that different, really, if you take that into consideration. Champion pool, though, it is Wako who has found the most success on that Varus, obviously going AP Varus every time he's picked it, but making it look really strong. So that is also a pick that's available for PSG that you don't suspect will be for DCG, which also can change the dynamic of that bot side. And it is Wako, of course. He is, I mean, akin to Betty. This guy can just pull out a win from nowhere once you do Apex those sort of 3-4 item spikes. An incredibly formidable AD carry player. And it does feel like he is just the man-to-man better player than Chris Carter at the moment. Although Chris Carter did have a very good series for himself against the Chiefs, obviously falling a bit short in game 1, but from then on out played very well. Now, draft phase, we do already see the Azir ban. I think this will be banned against Mission in all of our games tonight. I wouldn't see an area of which you'd want to keep it open. On the other side, Nico and LeBlanc, so the same bans DCG had against Chiefs are now showing their head yet again against PSG, and they did this the whole split, so nothing too surprising.
No, I suppose maybe a tiny bit surprising is the LeBlanc ban. I mean, like you said, they've banned it all split, but PSG have also taken up banning the LeBlanc. I'd be a little surprised if they would have picked it, but maybe Mission just wants to make sure that he can take advantage of the mid lane, and I think the Shiv LeBlanc definitely one of the harder champs to abuse in mid lane at the moment. Maokai was that last ban. Will it be matched by a Sedge from DCG? That would leave the Kai'Sa open.
I'm interested to see. I think that's probably the talking point at the moment.
Maybe leave them up and you just trade them. Because if you ban one, could be in a bit of trouble. Let's see. They banned the Sedge.
So Kai'Sa open, Jace open. What do PSG prefer?
Yeah, feels like...
I feel like Jace probably. Honestly, I feel like, well, yes, you don't really want to be giving over the Kai'Sa. It does feel like Maple's Jace is just a whole nother beast. And should have a pretty good time there up against Mission, who again, is really the guy that gets this team across the line. And if you just sort of neutralize him with a pick that does fairly well, should feel pretty good, but it is the Kai'Sa Hovid probably locked in. So Wako will have this Kai'Sa. Don't get to see him on it that often. He did lose on it against J-Team in their final game of the regular split, but I don't think that was entirely down to him. And now, looking like Zai will be the answer. Does fine in lane, but sort of gets beaten out as items come on for the Kai'Sa.
I think the Zaya can be a good response if you also pair it with a lot of engage and you just play something like Zyra Khan and go really far forward. Tristana being prioritized over the Jace would be a bit surprising to me, especially because Maple's clearly very comfortable with the Jace side of this matchup. That is definitely interesting. I wonder what are they going to pair with it, because they could keep the Tristana as a possible answer to Kai'Sa in the bot lane and then give Mission some sort of different counter into the Jace, but I wouldn't like it that much. Maybe they'll just take both.
Yeah, I mean, this is one way to go about it. I do have my concerns, though, on the Chris Carter playing Tristana. We haven't seen it from him, really, and honestly, when people have gone for this option, the Tristana has been made to look fairly redundant. It kind of oftentimes looks like you're shooting yourself in the foot just to try and hinder the other team. And now I'm sure Maple has an answer into this. He does play a lot of the Annie and does look very good on it. This Rel, if it is to be locked in, is absolutely a flex pick for the side of PSG. Is Neferi unlocked? I don't think so.
I don't think she's enabled, no. They could take the Rumble Rel here if they wanted. It would be difficult, I guess, to get AD from mid, but they do have it as an option, and RJ does like it. Alternatively, something like the Syndra that he hovered before does well into both of those champs.
Could it be the Yone?
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Maple has played a lot of Yone in solo queue recently. Got some new dark tech on the horizon if he does lock it in.
So yeah.
Okay.
I think it's pretty good versus both champs.
Tell me about the matchup then, because we haven't seen a whole lot of Talia into Jace in the PCS, and so it will be a new look, and you should, I imagine, have some experience in seeing this in your mid lanes.
It is, I would say it's fine for Talia in the lane. You're not really expecting advantage to go one way or another. You do have pretty good gank setup if your jungler does come, and I think in the mid game, it can be difficult, obviously because of Jace's range, but you also make it really difficult for Jace to commit to melee in a fight, so I'd be pretty happy being the Talia, especially if you do pick lots of other lockdown on your team. The Rel, of course, already there, and I'm sure more to come. That Gragas is locked in. It could just be top, but I think it remains a flex, in theory, for 3 roles.
Yeah, I would suspect this to be top, because Hana has pretty much predominantly played only tank champs, and with Poppy still available, depending on these bans, it does feel like this should just be Hanabi on the blind pick Gragas. And the only curiosity about that, really, and I mean, you can hold it as a flex, obviously, but if this is a top laner, and the bans would almost suggest it is, that you do kind of relinquish the opportunity of red 5 top counter. Now, admittedly, you can use that for a support if the pick's good, but ultimately, most of the support counter picks feel pretty redundant because it's just something you would have picked up earlier in the draft anyway.
Maybe they do just want to make sure that Woody can't get some sort of range support option, though, because Junjia has liked to play the Rel, and I think it's unlikely that you normally pair, you know, a range support with Kai'Sa, but I guess you could play something like a Lulu if there was something really greedy locked in from Orca.
Yeah,
it does pretty far-fetched, though.
It does, and honestly, with Nautilus still up, I expect Rel to be jungle because when this team's been playing Rel most recently, it has just been Junjia picking that one up in the jungle. And I almost expect that it should be just matched with the likes of a Nautilus. It feels like the Kai'Sa Nautilus lane is just too powerful to really want to give up. Now, admittedly, this Gragas could just be going top. I mean, it's not likely to be support out of all the roles, and so you can just lock the Nautilus here if you are DCG, assuming it does not get banned from PSG. And of course, realizing that this Gragas likely top, they did ban the Poppy there, which is a takeaway there from Hana in the jungle.
Definitely feels like a good choice. What will their last ban be? They ban away the Alistar, so a common response to the Rel. I think just keeping their options open with the Rel, really, and want to see what DCG opt into here. I wonder, they do have to reveal this Gragas at least partially. I think the Nautilus takeaway might just be the way to go. They could go the Rakan, but it feels not the best, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, it is just a well-rounded champ, and honestly, it feels pretty good as a takeaway from the PSG side, because I think Rakan would do quite a lot for their team composition, the follow-up on Rel, even the initiating for Rel, and then clumping people up when you do have the Taliyah, obviously, feels pretty good. So do lock it in. I expect probably Nautilus to be the answer here for PSG. Unless, of course, it is... Oh, okay, and with the Vi,
yeah. So Taliyah Vi is something we saw a lot last split, and it's really good at killing carries, of course, and both Jace and Triss, they are fairly vulnerable to being engaged on, you know, if you can cancel the Triss jump and if you can get in range of the Chase. And more hard engage would be exactly what PSG want. I'm really liking the comp they're putting forward. It's up to, I guess, what is most likely the jungle last pick.
And Hana's played a bit of Ivern, so that would make a lot of sense. Trundle would actually be what I think a pretty good pick.
Yeah.
I think the Trundle does extremely well into the Ornn. Obviously, shouldn't be laning together. And in fact, they actually can. You can put this Trundle top and have the Gragas go jungle.
You can even Gragas jungle Gwen top or something.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a lot of options here to counter out the picks. It looks like Trundle will be locked in. I like this. I think the Trundle likely to go jungle here.
Should do.
Although...
Well, we'll see. It should do,
okay,
though.
yeah.
I think this is the first time we've seen it in the PCS, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And it feels weird considering the entire split. We've seen nothing but pretty much Sejuani versus Maokai, and the Trundle does well into both those champs. Obviously now it's being picked as more of an answer to that Ornn than anything else. It does gank mid pretty well. The Taliyah will be vulnerable if the Trundle just walks up, puts in a pillar, and there is no help nearby. It can just force out flashes like that. And now Runes, I want to ask you real quickly because I know Taliyah is probably one of the most versatile champs when it comes to runes. People go Electrocute, people go Airy, people go the Spellbook. And what do you kind of expect to see in this game? Because for me personally, it feels like a Spellbook game might be quite nice here just to avoid any potential threat coming from the Trundle.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he's probably going to go First Strike or Airy. We'll see. I think that First Strike doesn't make as much sense versus the Jace because there is a lot of range there and it can be hard to proc it, but at the same time, Taliyah is not a champ that can proc Airy as often as others, so you're right, the Keystone, there's nothing that really just screams Taliyah of the Keystones. There's a lot of different ones you can use, but nothing fits her like a glove, so I guess we'll see. What do you think of the comps, though? Because I think I really favor PSG's comp. It just seems so easy to play and so much AoE, which I like from PSG. That's one thing I do like from them, because even though it feels like they're probably one of the few teams that are capable of playing high execution compositions. Oftentimes they just don't, you know, they don't pick up stuff like the LeBlanc. They just keep it simple, pick a lot of engage, a lot of lockdown, and it seems to work really, really well.
It's almost like things we've said earlier on in the playoffs is that a lot of these PCS teams like to outplay themselves.
They do.
And so PSG pretty much eliminate that entirely by just picking a whole bunch of press R, jobs done kind of champs. I mean, Ornn, obviously an absolute staple of that. Probably one of the better ones outside of maybe Malphite, but I like their comp. I think their comp is got a very, very clear pathway to success in this game. And now, I will say that Wako has lethal tempo, so it's likely he'll be going AD. I'm not sure that I like that all that much, because yes, you do have AP coming through from the Taliyah, but it does feel pretty annoying to play sort of short range up against the Jace. We'll see.
It does seem a bit weird. Definitely feels like a better... Well, I suppose there isn't really a lot of AD damage, right? There's just the Vi.
Yeah,
The
I guess
rest
that's
is,
true.
yeah. I suppose it is just pretty much a comp with 3 damage dealers. A Talia, Vi off damage, and then the Kai'Sa praying to God Tone.
Oh, they are. Let's see. Let's see if it pays off.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, something to keep in mind, by the way, as we head into, obviously, this first game of the series, is that if you cast your mind back to the interview with Mission, after he pretty much dominated mid lane the entire series long and played almost at Kise's tower the whole time, he then said he needs to play more aggressive and give over less opportunities. So we'll see. Maybe he's going to look for some dives here, because it doesn't feel like there's many ways to be more aggressive than he already has been.
Yeah, he might have to curb that aggression post-6 as well, because it's so hard to be aggressive into Vi once that level 6 comes through. And maybe that's even a reason that you pick it. You know, I wouldn't think it'd be the main reason picked up, but if you can pick something that makes Mission's job more difficult, I think that definitely adds something for PSG. Obviously, feels like the big win condition for DCG is in mid, and even then, it's not actually a big win condition, right? Because Maple will be fine up against Mission, and I think Talia as well, a really good champ for neutralizing mid.
Yeah, I think, importantly, while Mission may be the more solid laner in general, Maple feels like the better player as the game starts to sort of continue playing. He certainly makes a whole lot less mistakes than Mission does.
Yeah.
And that's kind of reflected in the team scoreline, right? Because a lot of the times, Mission kind of solo lost games. I mean, the Silas game comes to mind, and where he is trying it too hard to find advantages, where he just throws it, and oftentimes Maple, he's okay to concede a little bit, as long as later on he's able to find his right timing to make his mark in the game, and he does that extremely well. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, at the moment at least, Maple, obviously with that first strike, is doing pretty well in his lane. He had Scorch as well, so going for a little bit there of lane dominance.
A little bit of a mixture. Everything's looking pretty standard here, though. There is a Trundle on the way to top, and Arja is pretty pushed up. He has a ward, but he's going to spot him very, very late here.
Yeah,
this should be
Arja-
at least a flash.
And there is no jungle to help him necessarily.
Oh, wow.
He's trading over, bit of ring around the rosies. Nice pillar there will stop RJ from being able to just walk on out. He does commit his flash, so he is going to remain safe, but that's a big cooldown, and Hana's actually continuing on to chase him down this river. Jinji is waiting in this bush. Arza going to help out with the Scuttle Crab, and it's likely to be Jinji. In fact, Jinji could perhaps look for a double crab here, simply because of the lost tempo from that gank.
Yeah, easy to push mid, I think. If Talia does one push, he can get it on demand. Hana, he's played quite a bit of Trundle in his PCS career.
Positive win rate too.
That's all we need. Looks like Jinjia will go back to his jungle. Still has options though, and maybe a little bit of a trade coming out of the bot side. Big trade,
Not a
perhaps.
whole lot landed, and
Ooh.
Krasgada opting to run forward. Wako dodging out of that grand entrance, and a nice Prey Seeker will get quite a lot of damage there onto Krasgada, not able to proc that passive, so a little bit less than maybe he would have wanted, but ultimately, health trade certainly favoring the side of PSG in that one.
Yep. This wave will be held at the tower. Might give some sort of window for Jinjia later, and actually it'll force DCG to cancel their recalls unless they want to end up missing the whole wave. They do have their jungler coming onto the bot side soon though, so shouldn't feel too worried with Trundle entering the bot river. Looks like he will get that crab as well. DCG spot lane. They want to crash this wave if they can, especially with their jungler around.
I wonder what Jinji is going to build first, because it feels like this isn't the best Black Cleaver first game, which we've seen him opt
he normally
into
does
quite
that,
a
right?
lot. Yeah, he almost always goes Black Cleaver first on the Vi. And while it does okay for himself, he shouldn't be really playing for himself, and his items suggest it might be the Black Cleaver. Obviously, that does build into the Chem Tank. It builds into the Divine Sunder as well, but I wouldn't want to see the Black Cleaver here, because ultimately Kai'Sa is the AD coming through, and the rest is pretty predominantly magic damage. And Kai'Sa certainly also does magic damage herself, so it doesn't feel like the Black Cleaver is as necessary in this one.
Yeah. Guess we'll see where he goes with it. Maple, he reset first. TP's back and is going to be able to crash this whole wave.
Wow.
It has a lot of priority over Mission right now. Mission still hasn't reset. I think he's trying to make sure he can get the tier Dirk first base, which is maybe a little greedy, but as long as no objectives are giving over for it, it should not matter too much. See what he ends up picking up. As that D-Blade starts, so can be a bit more difficult to get those items. A lot of control around this bot side of the river. Double pinks, and Janjia, he might just go over the wall and do this.
Oh, wait, it doesn't spot him out.
No, and there is a lot of mid-prio here, so I don't think Hana can start this. He might make a play bot, but
yeah, bot
this
lane,
might not be allowed with Talia in that bot river.
This is a very weird dynamic. Hana now will spot out the fact that this dragon's getting very low. Mission did manage to get that back off, and now it should just be this dragon conceded perhaps over to DCG. Janjia helping out Hana, giving him a nice little leash, and first dragon does go over to DCG. Mission with a pretty perfect recall timing there.
Yep, got his tier Dirk. I think it might have been a little misexecuted from PSG. I think they probably should have brought maybe one of the bot lane over to DPS that dragon, but thought they could get it without. Does cost them a little bit, as of course DCG, they managed to get that dragon without using much tempo of their own. And this is when the Jace will be much stronger than Talia on this Dirk timing, while Talia does have the wave clear. In a straight up fight, it will be that Dirk Jace who puts out the damage.
Well, Jinji has to be careful. Body Slam does connect. There's an explosive cast available, but Vault Breaker. Jinji's turning around. Okay, I think that's wise. This blue buff, though, might not be his anymore. Woody's in the area. But with this mid-prio mission, we'll have first move over to that buff, and it is just the blue buff snagged up here and taken away by Hana. Some of the early jungling power that you see out of Trundle. Certainly one of the harder champions to go up against in a 1v1, especially when you have that lethal tempo.
For sure. Walker's still hovering around mid, just wants to keep this Jay safe. There is no level 6 on the Vi yet. But if they can keep forcing this mid-prio and maybe start the Herald on the spawn, it would be pretty nice for them. Still a lot of members around here. I think we probably will see a fight around the Herald just by how much has been put towards mid lane already. Oh, nice damage onto Mission, but he has 2 pots, 3 biscuits, and the D-Blade. So I'm sure he can sustain back up.
Look at how many biscuits have not been consumed this game, and tell me it's a good rune.
It's not a good rune. I'll never tell you that.
All right, that's good. There is a lot of unconsumed biscuits.
There are.
I swear you'd just rather have Cosmic Insight, like 99% of the time.
I think he has it, right? Doesn't he have Cosmic Biscuits, or did he take Boots Biscuits?
Which person are we talking about?
Mission.
Mission?
Wow, there's so many biscuits.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Every single champ has at least 2.
Wow, there's so many. Yeah. I definitely think Boots Cosmic, for the most part, is the best inspiration. Will be a blue buff traded away, and this Herald picked up. Now up to DCG's bot lane to make sure they neutralize and do not get dived. It looks like Mission is able to keep that mid-prio, which is really crucial because it means that Talia can't go bot and set up a 4-man. That's so good for Mission to be able to keep that, especially because it is maybe a little scary to play for that mid-prio while your jungler is doing Herald, because that's kind of the window you normally get ganked on. But he manages to get through it relatively unscathed, or completely unscathed.
Okay, I think Junji is going Kim Punk, which admittedly doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. But, I mean, we'll see.
We will. This could be a window to lock on Mission, though. Woody's coming out of base, and Mission has not yet reset. There's not a lot of vision around mid either, although Maple, he's just going to shove in the waves, so it doesn't look like there's going to be much to happen. So,
and this is the fun lane to watch.
Yeah, it feels kind of just how the game's gone right now. A bit of a farm fest in every lane. Normally, I would say that favors the side of PSG. They just really good when it comes to mid-game team fights. And this is how they won a lot of their split 1 games, where it'd just be, you know, go towards that 2nd or 3rd dragon fight, and then the teams come online by then. They definitely win. Maple, he goes for the crown. Feels pretty odd. In fact, feels really odd.
I think Arj's boots also feel pretty odd.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe he'll swap them out later. It might just be full lane, but it feels like later on you probably do want those plated steel caps, given that you are up against the Trist, Trundle, as well as the Jace. It's pretty much all the damage. Admittedly, early game, it will mean that Trundle's Subjugate doesn't take quite as much armor away.
Hana's in bot side here with the Herald. Doesn't feel like they're going to be able to make a play, but maybe they can just drop the Herald for gold, or they could all come towards mid Do they have enough tempo to 4-man? I wouldn't think so. No, resets will come out. So Hana, he's just guarding this bot side river for now. Dragon, 30 seconds away. It's really good, I think, to have a make sure the Vi has no sort of window onto that Jace. Cascada, he's going forward. No, he really wants it.
Goes supercharged and loses the majority of his health, but as does Cascada. Jumps away before that passive can be procced. And now, it should probably be a recall coming through from Wako, although the tempo lost means they probably do just lose the second Dragon. And I think PSG should be relatively okay with it. They can then look to contest the third. And ultimately, you do want to have some items online on both the Kai'Sa as well as the Taliyah. But Hana being looked at, he does get that subjugate off, and the Grand Entrance Magnastorm, everything has been used, and a massive shove here from Maple confirms he gets first blood. Vault Breaker knocking back both Orca and Maple, stunned up from that Rel. It should be Maple picking himself up at double as Hanabi arrives, as well as Arja. And these two tanks see what they can get done. Maple finding another kill perhaps. In fact, Arzi manages to take that one, and then the Ornhorn sounds. It does knock up Orca, but there is no follow-up to be had from that. And now a bit of an overextension coming through from the side of DCG leads to PSG to pick up 3 kills as well as the Dragon.
It was pretty much a picture-perfect team fight for the side of PSG and led this CC really well. And that's just what PSG does. They're really, really good at team fighting, and their players in general are solid enough that they'll never fall behind in lane. Kind of see that here. They make sure to hit their spikes on time, and Hana, I guess he wasn't expecting to be found out by the sweeper. Went on him over the wall here, and just look how well set up it is for Maple to deal damage. He gets all 3, I think. And it's really, really nice when you can pick Taliyah with setup. Has, of course, the Vi and the Rel for it. And even Ornn later in the game. And if we saw a damage chart for this fight, I think Taliyah unquestionably would be at the top. It's just such a perfect fight for Taliyah. And getting Hanabi on the way out as well feels like the cherry on top. Weren't really expecting to get this, but all gold picked up. And I believe they got a Dragon and now disabled the Herald. So everything PSG want.
Yeah, and once Maple does recall, he's going to be a very scary Taliyah. And wow, look at the damage he's outputting. This is before getting off his base. Does have teleport to come back to this mid lane. Oh, taking a look at top.
Big trades in top. Hanabi, he does have a CS lead for himself. Somewhat expected just from the strength of Gragas in the lane. But Ornn, you're never worried. Even if this champ falls behind in CS, it's still very, very hard to deal with.
Yeah, and ends up adding 5,000 gold worth of items to your team anyway, so honestly, you're pretty much expecting to lose most lanes if you're Ornn. It's kind of like Scion, but perhaps a little bit stronger.
Abyssal first item on Arja.
Oh, that's weird considering how much...
pretty strange. I guess he's just built to be able to withstand the Gragas and thinks the team can play 4v4 for now.
And I guess it will help out Maple. Maple is very far ahead, so... Yeah, interesting though. I guess ultimately he's not going to be interacting a whole lot with the Jace or Tristana, even the Trundle just yet. Really is only going to likely be joining those team fights when the teleport cooldown comes off, comes through Ornhorn, then try and help out. And to be able to do that, you do need to maintain at least some amount of health.
How's this bot tower looking? I think it might have taken... Oh, it took a little bit of damage there. Wako, he's got a small CS lead for himself, but it's not out of control. Next Dragon. That Dragon being picked up for PSG was really, really nice, because I think DCG are going to have difficulties executing team fights as the game goes later. So having that Dragon win condition pushed back by 5 minutes is super, super nice. PSG, they might start swapping their lanes around, sending Maple towards that top side. And this makes Jace really vulnerable, being in one of these longer side lanes. Normally, it's a good place for the Jace to be, but up against Taliyah Vi, there's that sort of semi-global that comes out of the Taliyah. And then, of course, the Vi follow-up would be really, really nice. Looks like it was Boots Biscuits for mission. He's got those magic boots in his inventory there.
Oh, yeah.
A little surprised we didn't see the stopwatch out of him. Oftentimes you see the stopwatch picked up against the Vi. In your runes. Mission is resetting. Does not have TP either. How aggressive are PSG going to get with this Herald? I think you probably do want to save it for mid. Although it's not as important in this game because there is no Shiv user. But maybe they can just get Maple to push top, come down, and then break that tower later. They don't really feel the need to speed this game up, though. I'm sure they're very happy farming up to their 2 items. DCG, could they make a play on top side? It feels like there's too much vision and Maple's too aware. But maybe they can get some chunk as Orca. He could face check this bush, will not go for it. The River's next, though.
Yeah, not a whole lot happening. Oh, although Hana will be sprinting to that top side. Maple, though, too safe to be caught out. And it is a bit of a quiet one. I mean, ultimately there is now only the minute left until this Mountain Dragon spawns, and I think we might see some contest go over towards that. We'll have to wait and see, of course, as Waco, not quite hitting his items, does have that Q upgrade now, which is very important, of course. Doesn't have supercharged upgraded, however, which almost feels more important a lot of the time. Not in terms of damage, but just keeping yourself safe and empowering those auto attacks and attack speed.
30 seconds away now. See if anyone else can pick up items before that. I think if you're DCG, you probably do need to keep fighting here. Don't think you'll want a super long game. But it's one that feels really difficult. PSG's comp is very, very strong already. Hana needs to be careful.
Yeah, they might get caught out just before this dragon once again, but wisely steps away. It is a 2-level lead for Jinjia in that jungle, so Hana will be considerably weaker than the Vi, who did opt in for that Divine Sunder as the item. Makes a whole lot of sense. I think the other 2 options that Vi's often go for make almost no sense in this game, at least for now.
Boom.
RG as well, building towards what I imagine is going to be a Juck show.
Yeah. Maple just got his Shadow Flame, so he's really, really spiked.
Yeah.
And they're walling off.
Weaver's Wall comes out.
Ooh.
It's going to secure that. At least this tower goes down, and they're likely to get one more chunk as well. RG is here, and so meanwhile, down the bot side, Hanabi trying to find a tower of his own, but it's going to be 2 towers picked up for PSG.
Looks like it gets traded, though.
Yep, 2 towers found, both inners on top and bottom are picked up by DCG. So all things considered, gold fairly even. But now, Dragon is on the cards. RG running away from Hana and Orca in the mid side. His mission still going to work here on this top side inner, which is a massive spike of gold if he's able to find it. RG's trying to answer, but the whole side of DCG are just willing to go look for this tower in exchange for the Mountain Drake. So, mission, feeling pretty good about that one individually.
Yeah.
But it is another Dragon towards that soul, obviously sitting at 2 now, PSG.
I think it is still worth it, though, for DCG. They got a lot of much-needed gold, and I'm a little surprised by PSG's macro there, because normally when you're ahead, you don't need to trade. You can, match lanes, just clear, and it'd be really hard to dive that Talia on the top side. Hanabi gets looked at, will be fine. See if he comes out bot. But yeah, I feel like they would have been safe and would have been able to keep at least one of those towers alive. Instead, while of course they do pick up the drag, it's pretty costly. 2 items come in for mission pretty early. Even without the first strike, picking up all that side lane gold has accelerated him a lot.
Now, 50 seconds until the Baron will spawn, and with Waco now getting his second item that Navori online means, there is the chance that PSG can shred it. Obviously, both Maple and Waco will do a lot of damage to that objective, but it is unlikely. I don't think you do it quick enough to not be found out. Jace obviously having a lot of poke, being that he is at 2 items. Hasn't yet upgraded the Mirror Mana, but not too far away from that happening. I think we might just see a little bit of a lull again until this next dragon spawns, at which point we'll see if DCG can find a lot across the map as they did with the last one, or if it will be a contest. You do start to feel like at that 3rd dragon mark, it feels a little bit more important to contest, because being at Soul Point just feels pretty horrible most of the time.
For sure. It feels like the only trade really worth that would be if they could do that Baron somehow. But their DPS, it's not the greatest. But it's not the worst either. They have the chance to be able to do it. A lot of members committed up to topside though, and I think this is DCG trying to find a fight as Hanabi and Mission are both here. Are just walking up though.
Orca, grand entrance onto Jinjia very, very early. As there's going to be that quickness used. Jinjia getting locked up, but does manage to get himself out of there with that Vault Breaker, and ultimately all it was Mission's flash for nothing really.
Nice pickup. Now Jace will be a lot more vulnerable in the next fight, especially if he doesn't have a stopwatch for the Vial. While the gold is even, I think you definitely favor PSG in the game at the moment. Feels like they're the ones making the proactive plays. They have the control, and I think you would say the outscaling comp. Definitely the easier comp.
Yeah. I think ultimately DCG scale fine into the game, but probably not as hard. And a lot of that comes down just simply because there's an Ornn that you're against.
Yeah.
Quite often makes the team that doesn't scale too hard scale overly hard.
Sky's got 2 items now as well, and I think he's going to need some pretty big items because that Ornn, while he doesn't have a lot of armor yet, will have some soon. That's going to make things a little bit more difficult for him. He actually goes for the... Is it the... What
Radiant
do you call that?
Virtue.
Yeah.
But I don't know what
His
the upgrade
is.
one is.
Primordial Dawn, maybe?
Wow.
I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mission, though, he has no flash. If he walks up to this wave, I think he's going to die.
I think he might... Oh.
I think Maple might have showed a bit too early. I think Mission was going to walk up to that wave.
Might still. They could even look for a dive, perhaps. Wako's in the area. That Killer Instinct should pretty much confirm it to be able to happen.
Yeah, a lot of pings on him, but they do have TP from Hanabi.
Yeah, he is being looked at. Acceleration Gate will speed him up enough to get him out of there. But it is PSG looking for this tower. Cascada jumps forward. The shove lands onto Hana, and what a chunk. That's half his HP gone in the matter of seconds. And now it should be priority over this tower given to PSG. They should be able to pick this one up with half health on Hana and Orca. It feels pretty hard to contest. Hanabi, though, continuing to be off on his own, and he's looking for these mid towers, and constant pressure around the map is being exerted from this Gragas. You almost wish it was a Fiora at this point.
Through that. 50 seconds on the next Dragon. Hanabi, he's being chased. Looks like he will get that recall off.
Now, is RJ going to be able to hit level 14? That's a very important question, because if he does, he'll be able to choose to upgrade one of the mythics on his team, likely to be Maple or Wako's. But certainly is a massive spike, not only for him, but for the team. Shouldn't be too far away from it.
No, it should be pretty close.
Yeah, Hanabi is 14, but obviously he has spent a lot more time on his own there farming in the side lanes. So we'll see. There is one more wave that can be cleared on out, and if RG gets the XP, perhaps he will hit level 14.
This is a big fight for both sides.
Well, GG gets knocked up by that grand entrance.
I'm a bit worried for DCG in this fight. I think the no-flash Jace has to play really, really respectfully. And it's a fight you feel like you sort of should contest. There's no real good trade you can go for. Could give it over, but what are you really buying time for? Just need to be able to find some poke, but it's not easy. Some very beefy frontliners to put up here.
Oh, he hit 14. Wako has his upgraded Navori, and it's a massive engage found. Arja and everyone else trying to do all the CC they can. It's 3 for 0. It's a 5-man explosive cast, but it's a little bit too little too late. And now attention towards this Baron. It will likely be traded for the Dragon, although not necessarily, yeah. We do see Maple and RJ staying away from this Baron and guarding the Dragon for now, and you're seeing how quickly this is being taken out. Wako doing obscene amounts of damage to the objectives, and it really was a massive wombo combo found from the likes of Woody and RJ to secure that teamfight win, secure the Baron, and back onto the map, likely to head towards Dragon.
For sure, and Orca, he was found on the side here, took a lot of damage. Wako dodged out of that, and the engage from Woody finds him and finds pretty much everyone else. And you really see the strength of the PSG comp here. Maple's wall even forced Mission into that fight there without the flash, and their comp is just so easy to pull off. Maple even has his Zhonya's now, so it's going to be virtually unkillable.
I don't think he ever used his stopwatch, by the way. He had his stopwatch before he had Shadow Flame and never even felt pressured enough to have to use it. Yep. So, I mean, obviously it has been a pretty slow game. We're at 24 minutes. It's 6-0 in favor of PSG, but yeah, the fact that you've never felt pressured at all. As Talia, who isn't a mobile mage, now granted you can sort of stop people from going onto you, isn't always the easiest to pull off.
No, it doesn't feel like there's the most threat onto it either.
Yeah.
There's just the Pillar and maybe the Rakan. Gragas hasn't been in many of the fights so far, so not super relevant. But now let's see how much they can get with it. Looking mid though, onto Maple, but that's not the target you can find.
Yeah, Flash was used, so it is an important cooldown, but he's kept his crown, he's kept his onions, so he's still ultimately going to be feeling pretty good about himself if there were to be a fight to break out. It does feel like DCG might just not be able to fight. They are 7k gold down, and they are missing quite a lot of item spikes. I think Tristana really going to need to get some armor pen coming through. Obviously, it is that Last Whisper picked up. Weaver's Wall comes through, splits off the team of DCG. Explosive cast lands onto Waku, who takes him down to half HP.
Oh,
Now Grand Entrance found on 2. They are looking. It's a nice lot of CC and Magnet Storm. Killer Instinct as well from Wako. It's 2 down already. He's flashed the wall. The passive will not secure the kill onto Cristata, who is limping away. RG flashes 4, is going to manage to find a 3rd in the team fight. It is 3 found, 0 in response, as Hana, he's on the wrong side of the map. He's just going to look for a recall to defend the base, but it's 5 strong. They're working their way towards this bot lane inhibitor. Only Cristata and Hana to try and defend it. It looks like it should only be this one going down, and maybe they'll start to look towards mid, which is quite low, but low health bars, they are just going to recall.
I like playing it safe. Don't think you need to give DCG any way back into this game. And it is going to be so hard for them to find it because there's just so many items being picked up here by the side of PSG. Now level 15 on Arja. Can Jajir get out? I think he can. Ooh, bit of a mind game.
Ooh.
Pushes him over the wall.
Oh my goodness. I think that wasn't what he intended,
No.
but it happened.
That's really
Hana,
weird.
he's probably not feeling too good about that.
No, they did get Vi's flash, but it does feel way too little too late here. You're so far behind as a comp that definitely functions better from ahead. You see the wall here, and it looked like DCG had defended. They cleared out the wave, but they decide they don't want to bleed out. They try to go for an engage, but Rakanot was already used on Maple. And once again, the Talia and all the rest of the team fight is just too much for DCG to deal with. And I think this is pretty much game over here. It feels like the deficit now is too much. And there was a lot of cooldowns used in that fight. And maybe
Back to
another
live. It is a Magnet Storm used. Killer Instinct as well. And Maple has made his way in there with that Weaver's Wall. Seismic Shove lands onto 2. And now with Junjia coming in from downtown. Lock it up. Orca does go golden. 1 auto from going down. It will be found. Cristata picking himself up a shutdown. It's the first kill of the game there for DCG. But they lose 2 for it and some towers afterwards.
Second kill. Not sure where the other one was. Can't even remember now.
Yeah, I thought it was first. I lied.
That inhib though, the bot inhib. There's 2 super creeps coming there soon, and even without the Baron wave, I think PSG might be able to break this.
Yeah, health bar is still full, and you've got Wako and Maple alive, so the damage certainly is there. Seismic shove,
so
good
close.
buffer. Rocket jump keeps him safe, but very, very good find by Maple to almost secure the kill onto that Tristana.
Yep. This is just classic PSG. It's not the quickest game, and it doesn't need to be, but it is probably the cleanest. There just isn't a way back in to this game, I don't think, from DCG. Maybe your window, while these PSG members don't yet have their flashes. But even still, it feels really hard. There's so many other things you got to get through, like Zhonya's or just all the tank stats that are up. And a minute away from Seoul, I would expect DCG try and contest, but realistically, feels like an unwinnable fight. You might even be better off trying to delay the Dragon just a little bit and then all in on the Baron and just hope you can get it.
Yeah. It was Sherilda's picked up.
Okay, yeah. I think if you play the game out normally from this point, you're definitely not going to win. So we'll see. Maybe barring some massive teamfight performance. But it's so hard, right? DCG's comp is so much harder to execute on. And Mission, he does have flash, but I think he might be gone.
Yeah, he is very, very extended here, and he is probably, despite the scoreline, the strongest member on the team right now, and Seismic Shove should confirm he does go down, and in fact will. And so, you've lost your Jace. Now, he isn't going to be up for this next Dragon, and in fact, neither is your AD carry or the rest of your team. As the engage comes out mid, it's found by Arja. He's trying to look for more. Junjia and Wako continuing on forward, trying to find Hana on the top side, though. Maple does confirm a kill there. It's going to be onto Orca as Hana and Junjia, they're doing their dance once more, but this time it's Hana who has to run away. Pillar will secure his safety, and now just that Gragas and the Trundle left to try and defend against 5 members of PSG. Another ornament coming through. Junjia will have his Divine Sunder upgraded now, and it does feel like there isn't enough wave clear, although the explosive cast certainly helps. As the 5 members working on these Nexus towers, they're both very low, they're both going to go down. Woody does jump forward as they're looking for more kills, but they will not land the Seismic Shove, so it should just be the game over. Game number 1, 14-2, 30 minutes in favor of PSG.
Yep, it wasn't close. And if I had to give an MVP to that game, I think I would give it to the PSG coaching staff because the draft diff felt pretty insane. And I feel like DCG's draft really, I don't know, it maybe had potential if they got ahead. They do have the ability to snowball, but I really don't think they got any value out of Tristana whatsoever. It's games like that where, you know, the Tristana, like you said, I think in the champs, like, feels more it's used as a denial rather than a power pick. And Yeah, it really didn't look too good. So I think I would expect DCG now swap over to the blue side, but I do think if they play red side again, that they probably should just ban the Kai'Sa and then maybe look for something a little different, because I really don't think that was that great. I mean, could have just traded Jason, Trist, and maybe, I guess the way they saw it is they were trading one power pick for two, but it feels like, you know, the Jace, obviously very strong, but can be neutralized, especially when there are no other kind of power picks around it, something like the Rumble or the Maokai or the Kai'Sa, something like that. And then the Trist, I think, especially needs to be enabled, whether that's from snowballing from the other team or, you know, just some way to get it into the game. Because I think just, you know, even just farming, it's not going to be as good.
Yeah, and I think ultimately some of the success Tristana sees from the mid lane is having higher levels, because you get the range from those levels as well as just the stats you get from being a higher level. But when you put in the AD carry role, doesn't get that benefit. And now, one thing I want to point out is think back to the PSG team comp, right? They had Vi, they had Ral, they had Ornn, and Xayah was not banned, but instead you did take the Tristana.
Yeah, so now maybe. I mean, maybe 1% chance you put the Jace top and try salvage the draft, but even then you would need an AP jungler.
No,
so.
I think just instead of picking the Trist, because you already, what did they see first? They saw the Kai'Sa.
Yeah, and then they locked Jace.
And they locked, immediately, yeah. Oh, that's
It's
griefing.
hard. It doesn't feel that great. No, I think that Tristana is a champ that can... It's kind of like LeBlanc, where in the right hands, in the right situation, it's very, very strong.
Yeah.
But I think it gets more credit than it deserves, because people see those, you know, those pop-off moments, those times when it does have everything around it needs to succeed, and think that it's going to look like that all the time, because it really doesn't.
No, certainly not. And I think, I mean, look at the draft. It really does feel like, wow, you put a Xayah here. You would have had Xayah, Rakan for a start, which gives you a very powerful lane. And then you get to have Xayah against it was an AD Kai'Sa, by the way, so it does completely fine all game into AD Kai'Sa. Against the Vi, against the Ornn, against the Rel, even against the Talia, where you can find quite a lot of value, because if you do dodge out that seismic shove, there's no longer any threat coming onto you from the Talia. And so, feels really weird. Obviously, they did immediately lock in that Trist and Jace, so you knew the Tristana was going bot, and so, I mean, maybe the draft looks different from PSG if they do see the Xayah. But ultimately here, it does feel like if you had a Xayah, your team comp looks a whole lot better from DCG. And I guess ultimately PSG realizing there can't be the Xayah, drafting this comp, it just made it so easy for them to play. Not to mention they found that 3 kills, which was pretty much the most perfect execution of a skirmish I've ever seen in the PCS.
Yeah.
That led to Maple being so strong, even earlier, despite Jace picking up that Dirk. So, yeah, things went pretty bad, both in the draft and the game for DCG, and I think ultimately they will have blue side next, so maybe we'll see a turnaround. And interesting to see if PSG decide to ban the Kai'Sa or not, because it does, again, feel like they don't really need to.
No, I think they could leave it up.
Yeah, I do think they can leave it. It feels worse for DCG to leave it up, because it doesn't feel like Cascada has much of an answer into the Kai'Sa, and especially the Tristana certainly didn't look like one.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I really do think that the way PSG drafts is just so good, right? It feels like a no-ego draft. You just pick your strong front line, lots of engage, some DPS, and that's kind of it. I wonder how much of DCG picking these champs into it is strategy and how much of it is just kind of misplay. Because you could say that, right, if we play a standard game against PSG, if we kind of mash them in the teamfight comp, we're just going to lose, so we're going to try play something that can snowball, right? And when that doesn't work, of course it looks bad, but if that's the strategy they come in with it, I can at least understand what they're going for. But if that wasn't it, and they just kind of drafted that for, I don't know, for no reason, then I think it's really bad.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's questionable to me is that you've got this Trundle, which is very good against the Ornn in team fights, but then you've had this Gragas who never joins the team fights, and so the Ornn also only comes to the team fights when he really needs to. But it's PSG that can pull the trigger, and so they pulled the trigger a lot actually onto Hana and took him down at the start of a lot of fights, which means he never got that option of using the subjugate onto Ornn and taking all those extra resistances. And so it feels weird. I mean, why have the Gragas if you're just going to split push all game?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that should be Gragas' job. He should be really in there with the team, starting things off or disengaging probably in this case. But he really was what started this off for PSG.
Yeah.
Should have been what would favor, you'd have to say, at least item-wise, towards DCG, but just perfect execution.
Perfect execution, and to be honest, it's not that hard to execute, right?
Yeah.
It really is just your Rel goes in, CCs them all up, and then Talia can follow up. And I think that's as well just a sign of a good comp, that you don't even need everything to go your way, whereas it feels like DCG, they definitely need a lot of things to happen for them to win it out. And I like that you bring up the point around the Gragas, because I think, you know, maybe if you see this teamfight comp coming out of PSG, that you just put Gragas in jungle and then pick a split pusher top, you know, like the Gwen, and just kind of force the Ornn to keep matching side. Maybe that could be the way to go, but this was another fight. Just feels like PSG's press R composition is too much for DCG to handle, especially when they were already behind. And yeah, they pick up the game 1 win without too much difficulty.
Oh my.
Damage from Maple was insane. And I think, okay, player MVP, obvious choice is to go for Maple, but I think Woody set up so much. I think personally, I think it should go to Woody, but you know, there's a lot of damage on that
I'm
Talia.
inclined to say Woody as well. Now, I mean, the fact that Maple is on Talia and had a perfect game and did so much damage, it is fair enough to also vote for him, I'd say. But it does feel like Woody would be another answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it should probably be Woody, but
I think so too. If you're
it's either
Woody, I
Woody
think you'd feel robbed. But I think if, you know, you just look at it from the scoreline, I mean, it looks pretty dominating from Maple.
Yeah.
It's a lot of damage, and
It's more of an
didn't die
eye test thing, really,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
It's just like the eye test, it feels like Woody passed all the marks. He died once, and Azrael dying only once is pretty good,
Yeah,
honestly,
fine.
because oftentimes you do just get taken out, especially when Trundle can steal all your stats. So, yeah, I don't know. It feels like Woody should pick it up. But I guess going into the next game, if you are DCG, what do you even look for? Because you tried to sort of get exactly what you wanted, to have a favorable matchup mid, and Maple just pulls out this Talia and kind of demolishes mission, which doesn't really happen in lane all that much. But in this case, they stayed even when perhaps Talia would have had a harder time. And then, I mean, it was Maple who ends up picking it up. And you see his damage percentage, which is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's not what you often see as a mid laner going up against mission.
No, definitely not. And, you know, you mentioned the Jace is kind of the way for them getting a winning lane, but I don't think Jace has the best matchups into the control mages. Oftentimes does just farm evenly, but then pokes them out a lot in the mid game, which is really where it becomes troublesome. But I think you could give over the Jace if you really wanted to and play a mage into it that does well. I'm not sure if Mission would play it, but something like the Syndra or the Ori, you know, does do pretty well. And I think even the Azir in the 1v1 is quite good. So they have options if they really do want to force a winning lane. I just wonder, do we really think that the lane being different would have changed anything? Because I'm not sure it would. It feels like comp is just way too gapped for it to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that we never touched on it, but you saw it in that last replay, is that Kai'Sa is actually the perfect AD carry to pair with the comp too, because everyone's running forward.
Yeah.
And the best AD carry at joining the boys in an engage is Kai'Sa, because a single thing of CC goes off and she's a boom, straight in there. And I mean, you saw it there, and honestly, I think the entire side of PSG played pretty well. Arzu's build was very questionable, but I guess it made sense considering the play Hanabi was going for. But that is game number 1 now. Done and dusted. Coming back, we will have game number 2. You'd imagine it'll be DCG on blue side, but we will come back with that news after the break.
to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch. always helps. When it's time for action, headlines and captions. Just imagine all of the hours that I put in running and gunning the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had a losing streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
And we're back. Game number 2 now, getting ready for that one. And I think a big difference has to happen in that draft because, as you sort of touched on, it felt like really PSG got exactly what they want. I mean, not only did they get the Kai'Sa, which, again, probably the strongest champion on the patch, but it seemed like Maple had the perfect answer there to the Jace. And so what do you do now? Because it doesn't feel like your plan of coming in and getting that Jace and getting that Tristana takeaway, it's not going to work.
No, I mean, I think we will just see something different because I really do think they'll take the blue side. But overall, I would just say trying to get away some of that just AoE team fight is a good way to go, or at least have options to prepare for it, because it's not like PSG aren't known for doing that, right? They always do generally play for that 5v5 team fight. So I think if you do take things that, can ball up and, something like the Zyra Rakan, I wouldn't be opposed to. Even the Orianna pick, I think if there's a team that it works well against, it probably is PSG, because there always are just going to be those 5v5 team fights. So we'll see. They are now on the blue side, and I think eyes a lot on the Kai'Sa pick of what happens with it. Is it just going to be first pick, or will it be banned away? I think if you are PSG, give it over, play the Zeri into it. Seems fine to me.
Yeah, I guess you don't have to, though.
No, you can't ban it away.
And especially because it doesn't feel like PSG have to ban the LeBlanc or the Nico.
No.
Because, I mean, we haven't yet seen Mission pick up either of those champs, and it doesn't really seem like he would. No, I'm kind of surprised he doesn't pick up the Nico, because that seems to fit what Mission likes to do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he bullies the lane on it, and he can take those laning runes, laning items, but it hasn't been something he's picked up. So maybe I'd expect PSG perhaps ban the Nico, but leave the LeBlanc open, because, again, it's likely that even on the blue side that DCG want to ban it so it doesn't rear its head, because Maple has played the LeBlanc and he looked fine on it, although the team around him didn't look that great. And so we are headed back in. Azir once again banned against Mission. I think that, again, will happen every single game in this series.
Should do. So DCG, very committed here to banning just the Nico LeBlanc on both sides.
And now I think you can just ban the Kai'Sa, because you've freed up 2 bans there that the red side often has to concede. But we'll see. Would it be the Tristana? Okay, the Tristana ban.
Interesting.
That does strike me as odd.
Yeah. I'm very surprised by that, but maybe we'll see why if they pick something for it. I mean, maybe they want to trade the Jace Kai'Sa and they don't want to have Trist available to take with Kai'Sa or something. You know, if DCG first pick Kai'Sa, PSG respond with the Jace. Well, we'll see anyway.
Yeah.
So Xayah is the ban. So I think that is definitely suggesting Kai'Sa first pick. But there is still the Zeri as an option into it, so I don't think it's the end of the world to give it over. But what other ban do you really have? I think you might as well take it away, especially because both Sedge Maokai are up, so it's not like you need to ban one. I think just ban the Kai'Sa. Let's see.
Renekton.
Interesting. Okay. So Kai'Sa is up, and I expect it to be the first pick, and I think it should be the first pick. The only other thing you really want would maybe be, I mean, you could go Jace and then pick up the Maokai Rumble later on or something, which I wouldn't be too opposed to that, but I think you've kind of drafted for the Kai'Sa, and I think it makes the most sense to pick it up.
Yep. We'll be locked in there. No real surprises. The only surprise is the fact that Kai'Sa is continuously being left open. Now, Lucian Hobbit. Could be a Lucio Milio, which is something that PSG specifically excel on.
Yep.
So that could be pretty scary. Certainly will have a lot of pressure in that mid game. And you never feel too comfortable when you're having to go up against PSG's Lucian Milio even.
I like taking the Jace. I think making sure that Kai'Sa doesn't have the Jace alongside that is really good. I think you can also just take the Maokai here if you did want. It would be, of course, really good with the Jace, and you can pair a Rumble with it later on. The Rel feels like it does almost the same thing. Locked in. Outside of DCG, what do you go for now? You do have your choice of AP mid laner into the Jace, so could pick that up now if you wanted. Alternatively, you know, maybe you just take your jungle, something like the Poppy. And Maokai, I'm not sure how much I like this, just because the more AP you have, the less likely it is that this Kai'Sa goes for the AP build. And I do think it's a lot better, and I think Mission will almost certainly be playing AP mid, so if you have 3 AP in your team, doesn't feel great at all. I wonder if Chris Carter will just go the AD Kai'Sa build, if that's what ends up happening.
It does feel like it has to at this stage, I think.
Yep.
And Orianna probably will be locked in here by Mission. Certainly wouldn't be any surprise. being that it is his, well, his third most comfortable pick probably after the Azir and the Tristana on the current patch.
He's been normally very good on the Orianna, but he has been a bit hit or miss with the builds and ults, so we'll see how it pans out. I think into Jace, it's a decent matchup. You do tend to win early, but you are pretty heavily outranged when it comes to mid-game. And I think as well, it doesn't make as much sense with the Maokai Kai'Sa, just because while you can bowl the Kai'Sa as she goes in, which is decent, and Maokai does set up for your ult, it just feels like it's going to be too much AP, and obviously forces Cryscata to go AD, which I think is a lot worse. Zeri locked in as the answer here to the Kai'Sa. I do like that, and overall, I think I'm preferring PSG's draft so far. I'd really like if they managed to get something like the Rumble even in the 4-5. Where do we go for now, though? Banning out supports, I think. Or, yeah, probably banning out supports. Maybe you could ban away some of Hanabi's AD tops.
Yeah, I mean, Rumble's still open.
Yeah.
And I almost suspect that it should be banned away because RJ has played a game of the Rumble.
I think so.
I mean, even the Kennen is something that RJ's probably been the best on out of all the top laners.
For sure. Definitely feels like these two top laners have more similar pools, at least in the carries, than some of the other tops, but I think taking away the Rumble would be good. You don't have any intention of picking it yourselves, and it looks pretty good for PSG if they do want it. That is the ban. And I wouldn't be surprised if he can join it, but let's see our second support ban. Could just ban away the Alistar. Could also ban away the Rakan. Would give a lot of setup to that Orianna. I almost prefer the Rakan ban. I think it's a bit easier for Zeri to play an Alistar than Rakan too, so what's it going to be? Poppy, okay. I like that too, but I guess that is just Poppy top, right?
Yeah, it should be. And I guess maybe that means that you're setting up for a potential Jax.
Yeah, it could be. I wouldn't think it'd be amazing here.
Well, Junjie could still play an AP champ.
That's true.
He is a very capable carry jungler. It's just oftentimes the team haven't needed that. I mean, we saw in his last...
Sedge. Okay,
Wow.
so I guess making sure there's no
yeah.
Sedge Jax coming in 4-5 or something like that. Now, what do you pick up? I think if you can, you keep this Rel Flex alive. Alternatively, maybe you just value the top lane counter pick into Hanabi higher. So I guess we'll see which they value more here. There's still a lot of picks left up. The Rakan, it's a good takeaway. And again, they have an absurdly strong engage composition. And I'm sure that Aja can round it out as well with even more. So PSG's draft once again looks incredible. DCG 4-5 here. I think need to find something that's going to allow them to pull ahead in this game.
I actually think this could just be another Ornn game, by the way.
I'd be a little surprised if he plays Ornn into Aatrox, but...
A lot of Ornns into Aatrox have been happening in the LCK. I think the fact that now Aatrox just builds entirely damage, you can sort of get through that lethality with Ornn. Obviously, the Drain tank does tend to do a better into the tanks than the lethality. What does Orca go for? He has played a lot of Blitzcrank, and it's been hovered quite a few times. Wouldn't be too surprised to see it. It has had some success already in the playoffs. Obviously, Aladoric playing it against Cryscata's Zeri. Managed to find quite a few hooks on him and secured themselves the win in that series.
Last pick here. I think just whatever AoE team fight you can grab, you know, a Kennen, an Ornn, anything like that would be fine.
I think Kennen's very hard into Aatrox.
Gwen.
Ooh.
I mean, I like this too. I'm not sure how the matchup goes, but
I do
presumably
feel...
it's good enough if he's picking it.
Yeah, it does feel to me... I mean, I haven't played it or anything, but it does feel to me like Aatrox should be pretty fine in this matchup. Admittedly, the side of PSG did need some form of AP somewhere, and that certainly helps them out. It will also give them a good amount of split pushing, and Gwen, while can split push, is also very formidable in team fights as well. So, good pick, I think, all around, as long as he isn't going to fall too far behind in that laning phase. And we yet to really see how this matchup plays out, which will be an interesting thing to look at if we do get some action up in that top side. But all things considered, looking at the drafts here, I think both teams should feel pretty happy with their drafts.
I think this time the drafts are a lot closer than they were in game one, and we're probably going to get a more even game. A lot of it could come down to the Blitzcrank, because I think Blitzcrank is a champ that is very clearly in each individual team fight, either it finds insane value or it finds no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think that can be difficult because if you are playing these fights essentially as a 4v5, it feels really difficult, especially because PSG are just so good at team fighting. But if you can destabilize them by finding a blitz hook onto a carry, suddenly that gives you a way into fights that maybe you shouldn't be winning on paper. But I think laning phase could also matter quite a bit this game. You know, the Aatrox and the Ori have quite a lot of pressure, I would think. So I'm expecting a much better game, and hopefully this is DCG's chance to kind of fire back and say that we do have a chance against PSG. Alternatively, maybe PSG will just slap them down.
Yeah, I think scary for DCG is that Maple has Jace, and I think that has looked like his best champion so far in the PCS. Obviously, Maple, such a formidable player, has been for many years now, and giving him such a strong power pick always feels a little bit scary. But you did manage to get yourself the Maokai, you managed to get yourself the Kai'Sa, so you don't have weak champs by any means. And also, I guess, interesting for the top lane as well, to come back to that, is that Hanabi played it 3 times against the Chiefs to very differing success,
That's
right?
true.
In game 1 and 2, very, very quiet games, didn't achieve a whole lot. And then in game 3, absolutely popped off and looked fantastic. Also changed up the builds between the games. He did go lethality some games, and he went Gold Drinker in one game. And so, I mean, that's more things to be considered of. We'll have to see what he opts into in this game specifically. It does feel like maybe the lethality build is just better currently.
I think so. Some very aggressive laning runes coming out of both the mid laners this time. It was the Absolute Focus and the Scorch picked up for both of them. And then Mission, going for that Corrupting Pot, really wants to heavy trade. And Maple, he knows how Mission wants to play, grabs himself the D shield. So expecting a lot of action around mid, but maybe not a lot of moving health just because of how much sustain there is. Sometimes you see the Jace in these kind of poke-heavy matchups go for the Resolve second and just grab the second wind as well. But Mission thinks that with that Scorch, he's going to be able to trade back enough. First Q misses. That's a bad omen. Eyes on the second one.
Maple's
I'm
too
not liking the
schmoove.
chances. Do we see 3?
The Orianna command attack waiting room. Oh, bot lane. Pretty heavy trades. We quite often see
the
this.
third one missed.
Oh, Maple's just having his way with Mission. Damn, even winning the trade there.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh,
the
we
fourth
hit
one
so-
hit. We're both straight. All right. We can stop hyper-focusing on it now. But yeah, there was that bot lane trade. Health bars are still fairly high, and I think both junglers will be, looks like, pathing up. Hanabi got demolished. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what happened to him. He has a D-shield as well, so maybe this is... I mean, I don't know about the matchup, but... Oh, big bot trades.
Yeah.
Level 2 versus level 1 on that blitz. But actually a lot of health lost by Wako.
Yeah, I think Ignite was used onto Arco there.
Oh, it was, yeah. Cleanse. Yeah, okay. It's quite a lot used across the board. Maple is starting to take some damage mid as well. Those Qs must have been hitting.
I certainly hope the Q's landing and missing isn't a representative of which games they'll win, because you're not allowed to lose 3 games
True.
and then win the 4th.
I'm a little worried about top. I wouldn't expect the matchup to be going that way, but I guess they kind of have made Aatrox a little weaker early game in exchange for giving him some stronger wave clearance and better scaling. Aatrox used to just be that automatic I win lane champ, but not as much that now.
The Nico of the top lane.
True. A lot of damage traded back.
Yeah, Maple likely to recall now, teleport back. Mission might even do the same.
I think so. And I believe this should be a base that favors Mission if they go for it now. I think you want a base before Maple picks up the Dirk. I think Chapter versus Dirk is something that does favor the Jace, so we'll see. I'm a little surprised that Mission opted to stay. I guess just didn't want to give over the free reset. But Hanabi could be in
Being
trouble.
looked at, Jinjia sprinting. Not very fast.
No. Waddling. I think that top crab was grabbed there by Hana, so we'll spot out Jinjia, and he might come behind top here, look for something in lane. The Gwen W was used, so there could be an angle if he wants to just go for a flash W through the lane, and that might be what he's looking for. Jinjia in the wings, though. He's waiting.
Does get caught there by the sapling, so his position will be known. And it looks like Hana's just here to try and assist with this crash, being that Hanabi is very low on health. But Jinjia will be in the area as well. We have a 2v2 lane in top. In fact, it's going to be a 2v1 lane now that The immediate engage from Junjie, very decisive, takes out Hanabi before he's even able to use the flash, and that's disastrous now for this top lane, as Arja is going to be able to go back while this wave is slowly pushing towards him, even after getting that first blood.
Yeah, it really does look just disastrous for the top lane. Tier 2 boots as well for the Gwen. I think that's going to make Aatrox's job really difficult, because Aatrox, one of those rare top lane bruisers that functionally has a lot of skill shots, and I also think just being chased down by the Gwen would feel really, really bad.
Yeah, Arja, you're seeing the advantage.
There's still Ignite for him.
Yeah, this Hanabi might be in trouble. Does have flash still available for him, obviously, but you're seeing the trades now. I'm not sure how this lane's supposed to start off, but certainly it doesn't feel like it should be this bad. And so now RJ really having a good time, and Mission might be a little bit overextended here. Junjie looking for a second gank of the game. Will confirm it with that knock-up. Maple picking that one up from South, and an early 2-0 lead for PSG. It's 1k gold, only 5 minutes in, and now Dragon perhaps being looked at.
Junjie just everywhere, all at once, and top lane already feels pretty doomed. I think Mission will still be fine in his 1v1. Did disrespect that gank and was heavily punished for it, but I don't think Hanabi is fine in his 1v1, and I also don't think there's much help he can get as Hana. He's not going to be able to go up there, and even if he does, ganking the Gwen doesn't really feel like an option. I think as soon as Arja hits 6, there's a good chance that Hanabi is forced to flash immediately.
Yep. Dragon will be picked up here from PSG, and so missing out on this objective the last 2 games, manages to get it this game. That feels very, very good. Not even last 2 games, sorry, just last game. Hanabi, as you said, 6s hit, Ignite used. Is it going to be enough? It doesn't look like it. That last needlework won't connect, but he does die. It is a kill given over to Arja, and the wave is slowly pushing, although Arja going to push this one in because there is no teleport to answer now. And top was already a disaster.
It was.
And now it's a disaster squared because Arja has picked up his 2nd kill.
Maple or a Mission might look, but I think that's just going to be the wave for him. And do you lane swap at this point? Because it feels more like this is a lane swap out of convenience just to pick up the waves, but I wonder if they actually commit to it because, you know, Hana comes up here, but there is not much he can do for Hanabi. I mean, once Arja is 6, he is just so strong, and the Ignite comes out. Hanabi, I don't even think he got hit by that ult at all.
No, he didn't.
He just bleeds out to the Ignite, and you do worry a little bit, I think, about Hanabi's Aatrox in general, because like you said, it was a real mixed bag up against the Chiefs. And I really don't think the matchup can be this bad that you fell so far behind early, right? Hana, he tried to save it. But if you fall that far behind in the 1v1, naturally it's going to be really hard to fix the wave, which is what has happened. Looks like they will swap back to their normal lanes here, DCG, but already off to a really rough start. Maple's already hit the point he needs. He's got Dirk even ahead of Mission's last chapter. And top lane is, it's so over.
Anyone that's played solo queue has been in this position as a top laner, where you are just forbode from ever hitting a minion. And they're looking to dive. No. And this probably does work, by the way, if Needle works back up, which looks like it is.
Yeah,
I think he's
a goner.
Oh, and Maple's here too. This is another dead Aatrox.
He's dead on
We're
my
about
screen.
to see Disaster cubed even. He uses that World Ender. He is just getting chunked away though and immediately taken out. That's a 3rd now for Arja on the Gwen. And Hanabi, he's having a bit of a shambles of a game.
He is. I really don't think there is much you can do to recover from this point.
No.
You don't have Prio in mid after what happened, and you certainly don't have any chance in the 1v1 top, so there's no one that can really help you. They can't win the 2v2. This could definitely be a 0-10 Aatrox game. I do hate to say it, but I don't see how you recover from here. And if Hanabi somehow does manage to perform well from here on out, I would be very impressed. Ooh. Big bot lane trade, though.
Yeah, I think the most critical thing... Oh, no.
No.
Oh, Needle works
like
back.
this.
Okay, he's not going to die. There's no way that Arja can just dive him again. But he did chunk the Aatrox down once again to half health before he even makes it back to these minions. And now Arja looking for that recall. I wonder if he has that leeching lair. Almost suspect he would.
Being that he has a lot of gold.
Yeah. 32 CS currently on the Aatrox. And it is. Leeching lair picked up, making his way to that first mythic item, which is very close. Hana, though, spending some time bot lane. A nice hook from Orchid does confirm it, but it's going to be turned around. The quickness, the grand entrance, the Nature's Grasp might just be a little too late. Cleanse coming through, Cascada running away. It is Hana, though, who arrives and is going to be able to take out Wako, so it wasn't all for naught. They do trade back 1 kill. stop any chance of a perfect game from happening, obviously very early on into the game, but Wako does go down. Hana, though, the benefactor of that kill, doesn't feel the best. You feel like you really need these carries to get items online to ever stand up against RJ on the Gwen right now.
Especially with the lead, he's continuing to build for himself.
Yeah, he's just freezing the wave again. Do you remember the finals of spring when it was RJ's Kennen against Solo Kill's
Yeah, it was like 90 CS to 40 or something. It was very much like this.
It was, and it looks like we're getting a repeat. He just holds the minion wave. Take a look at the replay. Not a whole lot to say, just a good turnaround, but then an overextension.
Yeah, bit overeager from Wako, but I do want to say, even though Hana picks up the kill, how bad is it that now this is, I think, the third time Hana's gone to a lane and his laner has just immediately died. Feels like he's actually been mostly in the right places doing what he can, but the lanes just aren't standing up in those 1v1s and 2v2s. Mission has still found himself a CS lead despite falling behind after that gank, so that's kind of impressive, but you do wonder if you hadn't died to that early gank.
They are committing.
Yeah, this is just a lane swap, but do we think Aatrox... I don't think he makes any progress bot side. He can farm, for sure, but he is just going to be sitting there.
I also think with Junji in the area, you are potentially losing your bot lane the game here too. Magnetic Storm committed. Orca just getting taken out by Junji alone. Does have flash available for him, but on the top side, Kriskada being whittled away at by Arja is going to have to flash away, is going to have to recall. And so this lane swap has become a disaster now for the bot lane. Everything they try to throw at Arja gets completely turned in their face, and it should be this first tower going down not long afterwards. Hana's in the area, so maybe it doesn't go down immediately, but it should do. Arja might be able to go back up there and get it, or at least on the next wave, which feels even better, honestly. Solo gold for the Gwen instead of sharing it. Almost wish that Rift Herald had taken the tower.
Yeah, that will be picked up. And Gwen is just, you know, this is a champ that oftentimes doesn't get ahead early and still scales into an absolute monster. But starting the game like this is just going to be absolutely unstoppable.
And you know what makes it worse is that Hanabi goes for like the only real early game MR you can in the Merc Treads. But Gwen does so much physical damage and true damage that doesn't even really matter. And now Hanabi pushing this wave is going to be caught by Arja. There is no mobility sums available, so pretty hard to keep going forward.
Especially without the ult.
Yeah, doesn't have that slow available.
Look how much gold he's up though. It's like 2.5k.
Yeah, he is...
It's almost a full item at this point.
I wonder how much gold he has when he backs, because he got the first tower, he's had a bunch of CS. Yeah, this Gwen's an issue. I think at this stage, you really have to try and find something on the other side of the map. You need this Kai'Sa to get some items online, maybe even Mission. But Mission as well, he's got himself a nice little CS lead. We've been talking about the top so much that we're kind of forgetting the rest of the map. He has found himself 20 CS up, but importantly, Maple's now picked up this Duskblade, and also on the bot side, Wako with the Static Shiv means they should even be favored oftentimes in these bot side fights. Mission not completing that Ludens, at least yet, has gone for the Sork boots.
Wants power and wants it now. I wonder if that means they're just going to fight this?
Perhaps. Oh, I want to say for Mission, this is probably the first time that it's been a good Ludens game instead of a Leandri's game. Because usually he just goes to Ludens no matter what. Pretty stuck on his ways in that regard.
Yep, PSG have drafted perfectly into Mission's build.
Unfortunately, though, this Gwen is the issue, and Gwen does go untargetable.
Yeah, it's pretty annoying to play against as the Orianna. At second Dragon goes the way of PSG, and you're definitely starting to wonder about DCG's chances in this game. I think in the 4v4, they still have a very good chance. In fact, might even be favored to win a 4v4 at the moment, depending, I think, mainly on how much value is found from the Shockwave as well as Orca on the Blitzcrank. But I think if there's any fight that Gwen is in, it's pretty much done. I wonder how much gold he has.
Yeah.
He still hasn't base, and he might be all-inning top.
He's just continuously holding Hanabi away from anything.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, it's a little bit easier now that Hanabi's hit level 9 to just farm with his Q. And the fact that Arja has not recalled means he is losing a bit of power that he would otherwise have. Junji, though, looking at Mission for a second time. Mission going to have to flash away. Does get stunned up, and Maple trying to find an angle here for a Shock Blast. Will not get it. It is the flash. Ensures that Mission is safe, but it means next time that is looked for, probably just goes down.
Would feel like that. I really want to just see how much gold Arja is sitting on, because he must have so much. He hasn't based in so long. Okay, let's see. He's recalling now. What is he going to buy? The Rift Maker, of course, but what comes out with it? Okay, Rift Maker.
Pause chat. And a blasting one and a recurve bow.
Wow.
So he was sitting on like 2.5k gold.
He had a lot of shekels.
Maybe even 3k.
That's
Wow.
a big spike as well. And I think also being this far ahead and just being able to comfortably itemize the Nashers, you do see a lot of Gwens just go for something like Zhonya's second or even Cosmic Drive. Something that gives you a bit of tankiness and a bit more, I guess, ability just to team fight. But if you're this far ahead, I don't think there's anyone that can really kill you. And just having the Nashers, it's such a big spike on top of a already very spiked Gwen. Mission, he's got his Ludens now. And Hanabi, he's getting closer to one item.
I'm so proud of him.
I hope he gets there.
He will. I think it's becoming easier for him to farm. The problem is, anytime Needlework's up, especially now that RJ finally has backed and spent that gold, should just be going down. Now, Herald started by the side of DCG. They do have 5 members here while RJ is working away at their bot side, but RJ has teleport, and if he does teleport up, this fight should go to PSG, although with the hero getting so low, it is an engage coming through. Wako does use his ultimate, and he's finding a lot of value as Junjie flashes away. Radiant Virtue healing him up in the Needlework. RG has arrived at the fight. This raid boss of a Gwen has come in. The hook, you might not have wanted that. Should be Orca maybe going down, although RG is not quite able to get to him. Mission on the top side, though, being chased by Maple, and there's very low health bars. RG does go over the wall alongside Wako as Chris Scarter and Hana, as well as Mission, actually all kind of stuck in a very peculiar position on a very peculiar amount of health. Wako flashes forward, secures himself a kill as RG picks himself up one. Shock Blast from downtown also securing one as Hanabi manages to find himself a kill.
Does trade one back, yeah.
Yeah, it was a 3-for-1 there, obviously favoring PSG. Herald, I'm not sure who picked it up. DCG did get it, so that's
I wonder
another
if anyone
win.
actually picked it up.
I think so. There was Mission and stuff were on that
Oh
side.
yeah, Hanabi's got it.
Okay, there we go.
I do hope we get a replay of that, because I think all things considered, DCG actually got away a bit better than they should have. I think RJ might have misplayed the fight with his ulti. We might get to have a look. I think he might have just thrown one at the blue buff. We'll see. So everything, PSG, they're dropping a lot of TP boards. RJ already got the tower, and he TP's in. And with the Gwen flank, this fight just looks completely done. Really nice flash from Junjie. So, okay, he casts one Needlework. Oh, he only has... okay, he tried to snipe Hana instead of using it on Kriskata, and I think that was a mistake. Ultimately, let a lot of people out on 1 HP. Still, though, it didn't really matter. I mean, they chased down, and these kind of fights are so good for Maple.
Maple's fancy footwork there, and then he just flashes and almost loses his whole health bar, but...
Yeah. I mean, with all these people on the low HP and the Jace just able to outrange them, feels like they're just sitting ducks, really. Maybe now they can find something.
Nature's Grass coming over. Maple's waiting in the wings. It is going to be that Magnet Storm used, and Chris Carter got extremely low, and that was only the doing of Rel as Waku does arrive, does pop that ultimate, will skirt over the wall, and Hanabi and RG's here. Hanabi managing to help Chris Carter pick up that first kill, but look at RG. He's just having his way with this. Is going to secure himself a kill. That was a second usage of Needlework. There is still one in the pocket, I believe, and might have even timed out, but back to the fight. Hana does go forward. It's the Killer Instinct going there as well onto Maple as they're looking for the kill. Quickness, Grand Entrance lands onto Kriskata. Very low health bars as RJ drain tanking away here at this Aatrox once again, but Kriskata importantly picking up a shutdown here onto Maple as RJ not finding a whole lot of value. Shutdown onto the Aatrox, and currently it's a 3-4-0 in favor of DCG as Woody probably not long for this world either.
No, I think he goes down and not even an execute there. I think that was an extremely well-played fight, especially from Hana. And a bit of a sprint from Wako ends up costing them pretty heavily. And now, suddenly, this Aatrox is back in the game. I'm not even sure who got that Gwen shutdown, but whoever
it was
did,
Aatrox.
Yeah, he's a rich man now. And from that start, to turn it around to this, I really think Hana smurfed that fight, but it was off the back of Wako just dying for free, because I don't think there should be any way PSG lose these fights. We'll get a second look at it though. So fight starting in the pit. I think Maple went in maybe a bit too early, but ultimately it does not matter. Can just play from range. And I think this is all looking good. You know, PSG can leave with this, but Wako, he dashes into 3, immediately taken out here. So that's a lot of your DPS now missing. So Arja still has a lot, but pay attention to Hana. He's doing such a great job of just disrupting the remaining DPS. I believe he flashes onto Maple at some point here. Let's have another look at it. Blocks up the Shock Blast, just W's on. Yeah, just gets him. And then cancels Junjia there as well. Manages to kite out, and then he goes back over the wall here as well. It just feels like he was in the right place the entire team fight. Really well played by him. And honestly, he's been playing all game really well. It feels like all the lanes have been falling behind, but despite that, he's been doing great. Arja might just gobble up another tower on the bot side. So despite that gold for Aatrox, Arja's still ahead, still has the gold lead, still up a level, and there's a shutdown on Aatrox, so better be careful not to give this one over.
Yeah, he did importantly pick up the Nashes now, which improves his team fighting and side laning capabilities immensely. And so ultimately it was a little bit of a throw there, a little bit of a happy gaming coming out of PSG. They should still be favoured to win this one.
I think so. It's still very close though, and I think these kind of games show that while PSG, they aren't normally a very good team fighting team, they do make mistakes, and I think when you also pick a comp that is suited for team fighting, you can actually take it to them, because so often people are playing those comps that are more difficult to execute, and when PSG just pick their front-to-back standard comp, they tend to come out on top. Hook lands on a Junjia, just a little bit of disengage there.
Yep. Now, I guess what headway can RJ find in this bot lane? It feels like now, with where the lane is, pretty hard to ever start auto-attacking onto that inhib tower. Junjia being looked at again. There is a lot being used. Static shield and Junjia running away. Radiant Virtue popping, giving him a bit of health. And Hanabi committing this teleport means that now this side laning against Gwen will become a whole lot harder, because you have just lost the only teleport your team had.
Will be hard, especially because I'm not sure if Mission will be able to stand up to Gwen in the bot side. I think if the W was used well, could maybe look for some sort of dive. And I want to see Arja just go down bot here. I wonder if DCG, they could maybe try and start a Baron and just try bring Arja out of the side, but have to be really careful, especially into the Jace poke. If they do get too low, get poked off the Baron, they could easily just end up giving it over. So it's a bit of a dicey situation now. 2 minutes away from drag though, which means that we might just see fighting for that. Arja, he's working on the Rabadon's third, so just a full damage Gwen. I really like it.
What if it's Shadow Flame?
Oh, I hope not. I really hope not.
No, it will be the Rabadons, almost certainly.
Yeah, Arja won't let me down. Walker's working on the Everfrost.
Oh. He likes the Everfrost. I think a lot of the Blitzcranks here in the PCS tend to favour the Everfrost over anything else. Does offer just that little bit more CC to combo with, obviously, that Rocket Grab to the knockup.
Okay, PSG looking to regain some of this topside control. So it's a bit difficult in the saplings, but at least they have some shields, some sustain. Can they take away this blue? It looks like they will not be able to. Mission's working on the Shadow Flame, and he's not too far away from it. That'll be a very big spike into a team that doesn't have any magic resist. And Mission, he does just always default to this build, so it being an actual good game for it is nice.
Yeah, for once.
Yeah.
For once, he's not playing the Shadow Flame into a bunch of tanky boys.
Arja's making a lot of headway on the bot tower. He continues to push in from PSG. They want to try break this tier 1 before the drag. It would allow them to push the waves in a lot further, but it's not easy to break, especially when the Maokai's here, although
The Jace makes it a little easier. Void Seeker does go wide. Obviously, it is the AD Kai'Sa this game. So, the Void Seeker not the most important, but more importantly than anything, there was the Nature's Grasp used, and that was used 40 seconds out from the Dragon, which now means that it is a lot harder for DCG to get any form of team fight off around the Dragon Pit, of course. Arja now recalling, does he have another needlessly large rod?
he does.
Certainly
That's
does.
my boy.
And so he's very close now to this Rabadon's, just a mere 1.1k off, which in Aussie terms this game is only a couple of minutes.
True. Now, Dragon is spawning, and DCG, they have given up the control. I wonder, will they try and trade the Baron? Because it doesn't seem like they'd be able to do it in time. But it feels like the only play left for them other than to just give this Dragon over. And Arja can definitely solo it, so I'm not sure I like this from DCG, but it's very bold. And if PSG make mistakes, they could find themselves losing it.
Yeah, Maple needs to find some poke here. It's going to be very important as this Baron is now down to half HP. DCG doing a very good job on it. Woody does get that ward out. Is
Might just be
Junji
gone.
going to get stunned up? It is going to be the blue team picking up the dragon. That is DCG.
Wow.
Baron for DCG. All that was traded there was third dragon. Now, importantly, it is still pretty hard for the side of DCG to get a whole lot of value out of the Baron because someone's going to have to be answering RJ in the bot side, and he will still just have push because you can't walk up against him. So it isn't the easiest. There is also, of course, wave clear that comes through from the Jace as well as from the Zeri that does have the static shiv. But an important takeaway from PSG, if nothing more.
For sure. And while that third dragon is given over, I think for the immediate power, I really like that as DCG. I think the way to deal with Arja right now is to just try put 4 people in his lane. If he ends up going to split push top, you know, go there. But I think for now, he probably won't have time to cross. So if you just play a 4-1 and overload the lane that Gwen's in, maybe then you can use your Baron.
Now, Junji went for Thornmail this game.
It's a little different.
Doesn't feel like that's the best item for him to have, but I guess it means that Cryscata will have a harder time getting through him, and he does have a lot of health. That's not the easiest for Mission to chunk through.
Well, that's the first tower picked up. Still, though, it's not the most amazing. Oh, as hold
yeah.
that thought, we might have a fight in the river.
Lands. Junji being stunned up as well by that Everfrost, but is able to just walk on out, and Mission's accelerated shock blast will go wide. Junji just walking forward. It's getting pretty low here. Should have to pop the ult for the Radiant Virtue, if nothing more. Does get it out, but he is getting so low on the backside of the pit, though. Wako and the rest of the team are taking out Walker in very quick fashion, and RJ exactly where he wants to be, just absolutely annihilates that AD carry and jungler from the side of DCG, and Hanabi trying to run away is not going to be able to. And at long last, Wako has come online. He's found himself a triple kill, and the team was 4-for-1 up against DCG.
Pretty one-sided fight, all things considered. I think the Gwen W there was extremely annoying. Mission was forced to flash over the wall, but then wasn't able to find an ult. And you did see at the very end that once the ult was found from the Ori onto the Gwen, that it did deal quite a lot of damage, but just wasn't anyone left alive. And now he's going for the Void, which... Oh, he's gone.
Oh, yeah, Grand Entrance will find him. It's going to be Maple who claims that one as Orchid just respawning back onto the map. That is the only Baron that was left alive. Now taken away as RJ gets himself a tower as well. This is a negative 1,700 gold Baron power play, and we'll take a look at how this really started.
It was looking good, I think, for DCG. They were really kiting out the Rel, and things were going great. But I think maybe Mission mis-executing, we'll see how it goes. Because I think if you've got the Rel this low for free, it's great. But Hanami, he doesn't TP in until very late. And then you see Mission, he flashes the wall. But then outside of the Gwen W, can't ult, which means he can't save Cryscata, who's just getting annihilated. And the Oriole did a lot of damage to Arja, but yeah, the fight was already over by that point.
Definitely, and importantly, it was Wako the benefactor of all of those kills. And so your Gwen is extremely strong, but now your Zeri is arguably stronger. So things looking very good here for the PSG camp, as they are only 1 minute and 30 seconds away from what will be this Infernal Soul. And because of what happened with that Baron trade we saw over the last Dragon, it means that they will get the Dragon Soul, and they will then be able to take the Baron if things go in their favor. Now, DCG obviously have to find a way to stop that. They can have a pretty big team fight if Mission's able to find a very good ult, but a positioning around RJ feels near on impossible.
For sure. The Gwen being this strong as well, having a stopwatch, and Wako having a stopwatch too, means that the next fight is going to be so hard for DCG, because it feels like the way you would win that fight from now is you either find a massive Oriole, which again can be stopwatch, or you find that blitz pick, and maybe the stopwatch even comes through after that. So I feel like DCG, once again, it feels like they've kind of run out of options, but they've been in that point already this game, and they still managed to get a miracle team fight. So maybe they can get another one. 45 seconds, though, from this drag. They're going to have to find it soon. And Mission, he's not going to have his Void. I'm not even sure if he wants the Void, to be honest.
Yeah, there's almost no magic resist, and he's going for Void Staff. I swear Mission doesn't even look at items. He just purchases what his muscle memory's the shop.
Okay, DCG, I think they have to go through mid, most likely. It's really hard to enter the river. And there's no Baron that can be traded.
Oh.
That's a lot of damage already onto Orca. Now, it doesn't matter too much as long as he can find a pick.
Yeah, get his abilities off. He's good.
I'm going to be forced out from the side, though, and it already feels like DCG are having such a difficult time getting in that this might just be gone. Yeah. Oh, it hasn't been started. It's so hard for them to get in.
This does feel like really DCG's last chance because Maple, not yet with the Shireldas, means he's a lot weaker than he will be in any future fights. These Void Seekers are connecting, but again, AD is the build, so it won't mean anything, and it is just the Infernal Soul given over here to PSG. And now, 40 seconds on the Baron means with the Infernal Soul, almost certainly will be theirs to collect.
Yep. I'm just going to go for the resets here. It's going to be so hard, I think, for DCG to win a fight. It just feels like the stopwatches, if anything, make it just completely impossible. And now, more magic resist comes through from Jinjia, so perhaps Mission was onto something. He preempted it. Even then, I'm not sure if the Rel is the one you want to hit. Think you need that Miracle ulti onto the carries. 3 items for both those mid laners, though. Void and the Cyrilda's completed. And all that poke on the Jace now, with no lifesteal on the Kai'Sa, it is going to be pretty hard to deal with. Admittedly, Kai'Sa can play pretty far away from the poke, but only for so long. And you feel like if you get hit by any, it's going to be really tough.
Definitely.
Baron is live, and oh, they find Jinjia.
Jinjia tries to get away, but he won't be able to. Does land that stun onto Hana. Nature's Grasp will come out, and where's the rest of the team? They are all here except for RG. Teleport coming through from both top laners. But Wako is having his way in this team fight. Jinjia collecting that first kill. Needlework coming through, slowing up the side of DCG. And that GA has been removed now from Hanabi. Wako still in this fight. RG going to use that stopwatch as Hana not long for this world. Dancing around the Baron, but Hanabi connects with that third Q, goes untargetable as Wako goes over the wall. It's a trade, and somehow, I'm not sure how, it's a team fight win found for DCG. Massive connection on those Qs from Hanabi, securing the kill there onto RG as well as Wako.
If that was the miracle team fight they needed, it was a huge shockwave, and then all that damage coming from Hanabi that ends up getting them the win in there, and they managed to pick up the Baron off the back of this too. And that was a fight where RG, I think, did 7,000 damage, and Wako wasn't behind at 6k, but just finding that shockwave there with Mission and all the damage from Hanabi ended up winning them a fight that I think, again, they probably should not have won. Let's take a look at it again, though, and a lot of patience for Mission not to go for an ult earlier. It feels like there was times he maybe could have looked, but he was really waiting for the perfect moment. Knows that he needs something big to win this, and they got damage on a Jinjia, forces the engage. But both the carries left untouched. Mission and Priscata in an okay spot, and the fight looks pretty doomed at this point. They got a GA from Hanabi, the health bars were low, but the flash in, and you can see here, this is when Hanabi, he starts getting to work, and keep your eyes on the Ori ball. I believe he moves it in here. The damage, was that a 1k Q onto Wako? That was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, the ball didn't even find Wako. That was entirely Aatrox, and that's scary. Considering how far behind this Aatrox was, certainly a threat in this game now. And the Duskblade means that he can't even be killed afterwards until it's a trade for Wako's life as well. Now, importantly, Krisgata has 4 items. He's now ahead of Wako. And so, really, the onus is on him to be able to find the damage necessary in fights. But you're seeing this. They have the Baron, and they are getting their siege done. But in the meantime, RG is starting to get to work on this top side of the map. Is likely to be an inhib trade, maybe? Although the recalls can come through. Hanabi is using his now. Doesn't have the Baron empowerment, very importantly, as DCG will now start to run away. RG picks himself up a tower. He's now getting to work on that inhib and takes that down in very quick fashion as well. So, inhib trade, which, when you aren't the team with Baron, feels pretty good.
Does. And it feels like there's probably one more fight left in it on this Elder in 2 more minutes. And it's one that I think still favors the side of PSG. But if DCG can have that happen again, they certainly do have a chance. This is pretty much a winners-take-all fight at this point.
Yeah, I think, importantly, in the fights they've lost, Maple has found 0 impact with his poke prior to the fight. And so I think, really, if you are PSG, and they are capable of identifying it, but identifying that is really what you have to do. Jinjia, though, looking for Hanabi. He wasn't seen. Is going to use that smite to secure the shield taken away, and Hanabi is not long for this world. He will just be going down. So much damage in such a short amount of time. Confirms that kill, but it is Mission and Hana now walking up here. No more needlework available for RJ, but it would be a 4v4 at best for DCG, as Mission is down, making his way on this bot side.
It is just the kill, though. There's no objective that can come off it, and Hanabi will be up in time in order to control around the Elder. It is a Banshee completed for Arja, which I think is a big deal. The shield can go a long way if you do manage to absorb some ability with it. Might get procced super early, though, by an Ori Q. We'll have to see. Even the magic resist can be nice, and it's a relatively cheap item, of course. The stats are always welcome. 1 minute away from the Elder. PSG currently the ones that have the control. And all game long, I don't feel like the Blitzcrank has found value a single time, but all it takes is one hook to secure yourself an MVP. If you can get one of those carries, you pretty much win the game right then and there.
Yep, we've seen it before. Late game team fights. A stray Blitz hook lands onto an unsuspecting Zeri and ends the game immediately. So we'll see if Orca can find that value. Certainly as a player that's put a lot of time into the Blitzcrank, even in the regular season. So it wouldn't be overly surprising. Red buff is smited away there by Hana, so Cascada, when he gets the time, will be able to go pick that one up for himself. And as a 4-item Kai'Sa that has that stopwatch as the last item, feels pretty good. Jinjia gets hooked up, is just going to go down. Doesn't even manage to get off his Magnet Storm, as recall is going to be coming through here for Mission. It's PSG though, they're trying to defend this. They might even be able to, as Arja's going to head down to the bot side. Teleport coming through now for Mission. PSG still in the area, they still have Jace, who will be able to poke away. Oh, finds the poke there onto Cascada, who still does not have lifesteal. They are, though. Yeah, Maple being looked at. He does have to use this stopwatch, but Archie on the bot side, it's a trade. They're going to get this inhib. They're also likely to trade this Outer Dragon for it, as Maple is obviously dead, as well as Jinjia. But Archie making his way into the base. There's so much going on. Mission does get that recall off, and Wako is waiting. The engage is found here from Woody. They're looking for Cascada, and Wako finds it. The TP's coming through. Hanabi will arrive, but it's a double kill for Wako. Woody is left alive. RJ has teleported in. It's a 2 for 2, but importantly, the Elder Dragon was stopped, and time is now in favor of PSG, with Mabel coming up very shortly, and Junji just respawning.
Okay, who's going to get this? It's still a 3v3, but there is no needlework. I thought maybe Mission had thrown the game with that recall, but I think they can still get it. It could come down to a smite fight, though, and Arja's just sprinting towards the base. There is no TP on Mission. If Jajir can cancel the bases, then I think the Gwen can just end.
Teleport for Maple.
I think the game's over.
Yeah,
I think PSG just end.
Teleport will be coming through for Maple. It will be the Outer Dragon here, probably in favor, although it is going to be picked up by Hana. It's the base being looked at by PSG. And some smart macro decisions means that this game will be taken despite the loss of an Elder, and it goes in favor of PSG. Thoughts?
Some smart macro decisions from PSG.
Yeah.
But not from DCG. Oh, Mission, why did you base? I'm pretty sure Hanabi could have held on. I mean, it was hard to tell, right? And if Mission had to base in order to save the game, then of course it makes sense. But when he based and he doesn't have TP, then all Arja needs to do is back off and TP to the drag, right? I think that should have been the Elder drag for DCG. And I think losing the game in that fashion would be absolutely crushing, especially because that game looks pretty over really early on.
Yeah,
right?
when Arja was 3-0 at 5 minutes.
It looked like it was just completely done, and they find the miracles. In fact, they find a few of them, claw their way back into the game, only to lose it in that fashion, especially because we're saying Blitzcrank, no value all game long, finds that hook onto Junjie, and you think if you kill the jungler when Elder is up, that's it, you get it. But I really think DCG mismanaged it, and you do wonder, of course, it comes down to those late game decisions, and they're not easy because these are things that generally don't happen in scrims, and chances are you haven't practiced this situation before, and you wonder how much of it is, like, sure, we could play that out better, but what if our top just wasn't 0-3 with 35 CS, and that Gwen wasn't 7-1, just absolutely turbo stomping the game? So I don't know. It looked like DCG in that game, they could at least contend with PSG when they pick those team fighting comps, but you really do wonder, I think, about individual skill, because I think Hanabi fell very far behind, and I think Mission as well dies to a, I want to say, pretty obvious gank and didn't play the rest of the game that well either.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said, but I need to let everyone know at home. This was the reaction that Shock had when we were coming out of that game. It was something, tell me how accurate I was, but it was something like this.
Yeah, it wasn't good, man. I'm just sad.
He was not impressed with the recall there. And I mean, it's hard to tell, I guess, because we didn't get to see what the base was looking like. And maybe, obviously, I guess the hardest part is that Mission just teleported there as well. He just teleported there. They went skirmish for a little bit. Nothing was really found. based and then didn't have the teleport to rejoin. Hanabi did manage to come in and trade the 2 for 2, which did happen, but you lost your Kai'Sa then, which is the vast majority of your Elder Dragon damage. And then by that stage, RJ realized, well, I can just go to the base now. Goes to the base. There was no teleports to be able to get back there. Maple had his teleported onto the minions, and it was really just the game. And I think the person I want to say was most hard done by in that situation is Hana, because that guy...
Yeah. He played a really good game.
He was playing phenomenally, and despite being so far behind, not him individually, but the team as a whole, and you are Maokai, he had some fantastic plays that caught Maple out a couple of times. He caught Wako out. That guy was playing phenomenally, and it really wasn't his fault that any of the bad stuff happened, because...
No.
He would go to a lane, and his laner would just die before he could fully get there. I mean, it happened, what, you said like 3 times? It happened once top. I think it happened in all 3 lanes at least once. And he really did try his best, and I think it was a very admirable performance coming out of Hana. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And I think one thing that's exciting is that PSG won with the heavy team fighting comp, and now they've won with a split pushing comp. And so it feels like, how do you pin this team down? Feels pretty hard now.
It is. I guess we'll get to see the very beginning of what happened in the top side, because Hanabi, even at level 2, was already miles behind. So this is Gwen, of course, with the E start. And maybe it's just... Was it E start?
No, this is Q start.
Sorry. And maybe it just wasn't enough respect. I mean, Hanabi, it looks like he's letting the wave push to him. So I think he can just back off. I'm not really sure where the health ends up going. I guess he overextended to try... What? Because he didn't get any of the CS anyway.
No, and he just constantly being run down, and then, wow.
Yeah, you do just feel like this is misplay in the lane, and I don't think it's really forgivable. I mean, maybe you can say that Gwen versus Aatrox, not a matchup we've seen in a while, and certainly this Aatrox is different, but it doesn't feel like he accomplished anything by doing that and fell so far behind, almost just irrecoverably behind, right? Yeah. Hana tried to come out and bail him out, and it still wasn't enough. So credit, of course, to Arja, but you almost feel like Hanabi did it to himself.
Yeah, in many ways you do definitely feel like that. And I want to say, like, once he did get those items online, we saw in that Baron fight how much damage that Q was doing. He almost one-shot Wako on the Zeri.
Yeah, it was insane.
Managed to find that kill eventually, and it really does feel like if Aatrox wasn't so far behind, would have had a pretty good time for himself. And this replay is going on forever.
I like this,
We're actually just seeing a laning clinic done by Arja.
We needed some more context. So, I mean, this is always the tough part, right? In top lane, where you crash the wave, it's going to start bouncing back out. And if you've already built up such a big advantage that even the creep advantage isn't going to be enough for you to come out on top, it's really hard. And I think Jinjia coming here is really good. You know, it's going to mean that Arja can continue to play around this frozen wave. If Hanabi steps up too far, he is going to die, you know, forced to walk away from that rather than trading any damage back. And Hana, what do you do here? Because you kind of have to come up and break this, but also you lose the 2v2. So it's really hard. I mean, do you just let your Aatrox die? Clearly, Hana didn't think so. He comes to lane, but how can they push this out when they lose a 2v2 so hard?
I almost feel like Hanabi just has to, because of how the level 1 went, he just has to recall and teleport back.
Yeah, maybe just base TPs and then they push it out. Something like that.
And sure, I think even at that stage, you're losing the lane, but at least you haven't given over a kill.
Yeah.
Which does just happen here.
That's true, especially the first blood.
Yeah, this was really well found by Jinjia, I want to say too. Really good knowledge of the range, because that Rel Q was actually deceptively short. And so getting into range with that felt pretty good.
That was another hook onto Jinjia there, but it didn't find as much value as that one in the very, well, almost very last fight. And this was the miracle, one of the many miracles actually that DCG found in order to put this game in a winnable position. It looked like the fight was pretty damn over at this point, but somehow, I guess it was really just Hanabi. I thought in the moment that the Oriole hit the what's he called? Zeri. But it really was just onto Arja, and all that damage came from Aatrox.
Yeah,
That's pretty crazy.
Flashes into the pit, but then Hana as well as Hanabi are just playing around the Baron, and so Wako can never actually hit them. And then he just gets annihilated, assassinated by the Aatrox top.
Okay, I really hope we get a long replay of this laning phase style, because this was the hook that I think... Jinjia, what is bro doing? He's just hooked. And this, I think, should be the Elder. I mean, what you can do here is if you're really scared about the Gwen, you send mission to base, you clear it out, and then he can TP, right? But he TPs in very early, so you're saying, okay, we're just going to rush this down. They catch out Maple, and everything is looking really good here. Now, I really hope we get to see the base, because I'm I'm 90% sure that Aatrox can just clear the wave and at least survive, but mission recalling, and I think, I'm not even sure if they noticed mission recalled until he shows, okay, yeah, they spotted him there on the sweeper, and then they check, so they know he's based, and they immediately go, and Gwen walks away to come TP to this fight. And I think the fact that Gwen was moving away as well, even when they didn't have confirmation of Ori recalling, means that even if mission hadn't based, they probably would, have been able to fend off the Gwen.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 towers and an Aatrox versus Gwen. It does feel like you're never getting too much head work done, but yeah, it really was just this.
It's tragic. I mean, it is really easy to say in hindsight and with full vision, because the reality is when you're in this really intense moment and you're watching a lot of stuff, especially in a situation that very rarely comes up in scrims or solo queue, it is really hard to make the right decision. So I don't blame them fully for it, but at the same time, it is a really crucial mistake and it ends up costing them the game. As PSG, they just double TP in, and I honestly think even without the double TP, I think RJ probably would have just ended.
Yeah, maybe. Orca's here, and Hanabi does make it back, but it would have been close, I think. Obviously, RJ doing so much damage to those towers. It was RJ who picks up the most damage, and I think when you talk about MVP, it just has to be him.
Yeah. And Hanabi's damage being so low is sort of surprising just because of how much he did in that one fight, and I wonder actually how, I can't remember, but a big portion of that damage must have been just in that singular fight, but for me, MVP definitely goes to RJ.
Yeah, and I think, importantly, Hanabi obviously started off really far behind, but he did pick himself up quite a few shutdowns. So even then, it feels a bit surprising that Aatrox found so little value. Obviously was just having to lane into RJ the whole time, who was immensely far ahead, doing almost 30% of his team's damage, despite the fact he had a Jace on his team. And I also want to point out, I think Maple had a pretty quiet game for himself, didn't really find a whole lot. Admittedly, this game did quickly become about the RJ show, and all you had to do on the other side was not give over too much, which I will admit they didn't do a very good job of, because a lot of those team fights weren't played too well. And I also think RJ didn't play the team fights as well as he possibly could have, because a lot of those needleworks were not finding their mark. And you almost wonder, maybe he should have taken the Ghost, but that is a second game now in the bag for PSG. And coming back, we will be looking for, can DCG get a reverse sweep? It feels like it might be off the cards, but if that's going to happen, it has to start now.
Can't find another one to get around. You try and try, but never find someone who's right. Keep looking for it, but you can't find. Can't find another one to get around. You try and try, never find another me. What is missing when you've been? Tell me something I can hear. Body screaming. You won't admit that you want me close. I know you need, you know I know. When you're with me, you feel it the most on the low. You say you're looking, keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around. You try and try, but never find someone who's right. Keep looking for it, but you can't find it. Can't find another one to get around. You try and try, never find another me.
imagine all of the hours that I put in running and gunning the passion. All of them clap, big applause. Wish I could pause all their reactions. Ooh, we know I never had a losing streak. I know you see what adrenaline's doing to me. I've been kicking game, Bruce Lee. You ain't in the game too weak. Make them feel the pain too deep. Tell them get out the kitchen, you can't take the heat. What I'm doing, getting right to it. The money is talking, I'm someone that's coming in just how I do it. Can't stop, nah, won't stop. Spin on live, you don't believe it, just watch.
Welcome back, everybody, for game number 3 and potentially the last game of the night. Obviously, PSG now being on that match point that they are 2-0. But it's up to DCG to prove to us that they have more in the tank. I think mentals could be a little bit on the wayside after how they lost the last game. But it is really going to... I don't even want to say it's up to draft because I feel like they had a perfectly fine draft in that game. It was more the execution of the draft and really that top side that just went to the wayside very, very quickly.
I think so too. PSG, they didn't look unbeatable though. I think they made a lot of mistakes. And I think, again, when you kind of mentioned it about Maple maybe not having the cleanest game, but Waku as well had a couple ints, which you don't really expect from him in the team fights. We have seen him fall behind in lane sometimes recently, but never fails to execute when it comes to team fights. This game, though, a little different, and maybe if DCG can exploit that again, they could find a way in there. But I think I agree that it feels like PSG, they've fully read what DCG want to play by now, and if DCG can get their act together, play individually a bit better, they could win. But I think it is really looking like PSG 3-0.
Oh, Archie just gave us a little wink.
Ooh,
Maybe he's got someone in store for
special?
us.
Yeah.
He might be cooking, perhaps. That would be pretty exciting. I mean, to be fair, we don't often see his Gwen. Certainly looked good on that. Team fighting maybe not as clean as his laning, but his laning certainly was pretty ferocious. Put Hanabi at a considerable lead. Not a lead.
Deficit?
Gave himself a considerable lead, I suppose.
Yep. Well, they have chosen the blue side again, of course. And I'm curious if anything changes here. I'm trying to think, what would you even change in the draft? Because I agree, like, draft was not an issue. Of course, it could probably still be optimized, and maybe we'll see any of those optimizations here. Maybe the Gwen could be something that gets banned out second phase. Hard to tell how much of that is actually the matchup, though, because if you do fall behind that far at level 2, it is just going to be really hard to recover.
He also picked it blind, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm misremembering.
I think so, yeah.
Kai'Sa banned away now from DCG. So that is a change already that we're going to see.
Yeah, so Xayah last time. I wonder, do they want the Xayah this time? Or do you think they're just... Yeah, I'm not too sure. It feels a little bit random to me.
Yep, not entirely sure. It does feel like PSG would have just given that over. And in fairness, Cascada really didn't have a bad game for himself. He played completely fine.
I guess maybe they just didn't want the Kai'Sa Jace trade.
Yeah, Jace banned, though, from PSG. So.
Okay,
Ooh.
and that leaves that Renekton up. So this could actually be very different from DCG. Both Sedge and Maokai are up too. To PSG, I think you take the Sedge and you look to play the Jax later. Let's see, though. The Xayah is up too. I think maybe Sedge Xayah. What do you think?
Not Quinn Xayah?
Well?
Now, I mean, this makes a whole lot of sense for PSG.
This makes sense too.
Because they've already shown this series even that they can do the Rowland support or the jungle. So a little bit of uncertainty is formed from that pick.
Yeah.
Now, it does mean you can't really get the Rakan in on Red 3, which could feel good sometimes, but it doesn't really happen anyway.
That will be the Sedge Renekton most likely given over. And I guess they're valuing the Rel Flex higher than the Sedge Denial. Admittedly, they can still play something like the Rumble with the Rel. I'm not sure how it does into the Renekton. Zeri, the obvious answer to Desire, should be picked up. Do you think they probably should pick the Sejuani here? The other choice would be to take away that Rakan. I mean, I guess they could go Maokai, but...
I don't think PSG lock in the Rakan anyway. I think they want to keep
probably
this
keep
Rel.
the flex, yeah. But they could if they wanted, and it would give them already a really strong teamfight comp.
I also would prefer to see the Maokai for DCG than the Sejuani, because honestly, out of every single PCS team we have, it was the Chiefs that looked the best at using the Renekton Sejuani.
That's true. And I think Hana's Maokai last game was pretty insane.
Yeah. I like this.
So, obviously keeping the Rel flex is valuable, but I honestly think they should just take the Rakan. I think it would make their comp just absurdly strong, and they could ban away more supports after that, but there are a lot of mids banned away, so finding a strong mid laner is not the easiest task right now. Could be the Annie that gets picked up, and this does really well, I think, with the Rel. I wonder, do you think there's possibility of a Vi coming in up against the Zeri? Could be something like the Vi Annie, a way to shut it down.
That does feel like something that's certainly what PSG like to do. I almost would suspect something akin to that. Maybe even just letting this Rel be jungle and taking Nautilus could also be something to look at. I mean, I guess these bans that we're about to see will sort of shape the way. And Alistair ban makes you think perhaps it will be the Rel that is going to be the support, but certainly nothing set in stone.
Okay. So DCG, where do your bans go this time? Rakan could be one of them, but of course the Rel can always go down there, so it's not easy. Maybe you ban the Vi. They ban the Viego, which feels like the weirdest one of the bunch. But I guess just maybe want to force this Rel into the bot lane, or into the jungle, excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, Hana did fine in that sort of jungle comparison. It was really just the top lane that got exploited. And with the Renekton in this game, feels a whole lot harder to be able to do that. There is the Rumble still available, which is something that Arges liked. And honestly, even though you do already have AP, Annie isn't the greatest solo AP, and so it doesn't feel too bad to have the Rumble alongside it. They banned the Rakan.
Yeah, they banned the Rakan, which is
again, I think this means that Rel's probably just their support.
Yeah. So would expect the Sedge ban. I guess they were scared of, again, the Sedge Jacks coming in 4-5. I'm not sure how much credit you'd have to give that. Hard to say. But it was, of course, a possibility. And now I think jungle should be picked up for G. I think Vi, Poppy being the go-tos here. Something like the Ivern wouldn't pair well, I don't think, with their current comp. Okay, so they're going to just take the top. I mean, you can pick... Actually, it makes more sense. Like, you've already seen the top, and you can keep the Rel flex alive. So they lock in the Ornn. I do like that better than...
Oh.
What will we see? Do have to blind pick support. Well, of course, it can be the Rel bot lane, I think. Do have to respect that flex coming through.
Morgana, not something we've seen in a long while.
Also have to find missions mid lane. I think Orianna would be the obvious choice.
Okay, Braum. That's another thing that pairs pretty well with the Renekton. Also, Zeri can proc it fairly easily. So, not the worst pick. Does very, very well into Ornn, of course. Can deny that Ornhorn from being able to find a massive knock-up, obviously with the second usage of Call of the Forge God. And currently mission hovering the Orianna would make a lot of sense, pairs well with the team comp.
Yeah, do think it'll be locked in.
He did look good on it yet last game.
Okay, last pick, we'll get to see where that Rel is going. Fiddlesticks.
I hope this is locked in.
Me too.
I actually think
it does give really, really good team fight.
Yeah, that would be a crazy team fighting comp. And, I mean...
Won't be that.
No, it won't. They're just hovering Godtone's Hell Pigs' team composition at the moment.
Okay, what's it going to be?
Kindred, okay.
I'm not sure I like it, to be honest. What do you... I don't know. It doesn't feel like the best Kindred game to me.
I guess the argument for it is a relatively low-ranged game, excluding that Orianna. And so you can find quite a lot of value there, as well as... Obviously, you can find a pretty good denial on Mission's ability to have impact with that Lamb's Respite. So I guess there is a little bit of value there. But again, you do have the Nature's Grasp that comes out, which does a lot of zoning, and it's very effective against these AD carry champions. We'll have to see, though. Junjia, a very, very good jungler. I'm sure he'll be able to make it work. And now really, I mean, the tale is, I think ultimately in terms of draft, I don't particularly favor one side. I will say if it was more of a team fighting jungler, then I think PSG may have just won the draft, but I don't think they've lost it necessarily. I think the Braum pick for DCG does help them a lot in being able to deny that Ornn from finding engages. And it feels like now that means a lot of the onus will be onto Woody on this rel to find them for himself, as well as, of course, Maple's Annie.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately both teams should feel pretty happy with what they got, and it will, again, as often does, come down to execution. And if last game was to go off, it doesn't feel like either team had the particularly cleanest execution.
No, don't think so. It's an uncharacteristic game from PSG with a lot of mistakes, and if DCG can force that out of them again, that would be really good. Hoping at least for a more stable top lane, and it should be. They're definitely lane phase this time. Renekton versus, what was it, the Ornn?
Yeah.
Not going to be as volatile as what we saw before.
And I'm sure Hanabi feels pretty comfortable, being that it is obviously now them playing up against a match point PSG. Gets to go in his top lane, manages to rip out the Croc, and should just feel pretty happy up there. Shouldn't find that much headway. Will likely have a CS lead, but pretty hard to ever look for a kill onto Ornn. And Ozzy's Ornn in game number 1 looked completely fine. Certainly should do well to enable his team, especially if they are able to find a way to get Braum's shield out, because I think Braum's shield in this game has so much value. Does really well against Xayah. Does also really well against Ornn, and that's a pretty impressive win rate there.
Impressive Croc indeed. And Mission, at least he doesn't have any biscuits. I think he had boots and DMAT. So I'm happy about that.
There will be, well, what Sinner's had it? There's always...
Maple had it, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that guy. It makes even less sense because he should have the mana flow banned.
Yeah, I guess he just wants extra sustain, but doesn't feel like it adds much. I think it's a bait. But mid matchup could be pretty important, and both these champs are quite strong in lane. E-Star Annie is really annoying to play against. But Orianna, one of the strongest 1v1 laners out there in terms of the mid lane. And Mission, he always makes sure to use it to full effect. Wonder what item he'll go this game, because there's an argument for both. I think the Liandry is probably better, because you're going to have to hit Ornn eventually. But if he did go for Ludens and focused on killing those squishies, I could at least see it.
Look, Shock, I'm sorry to tell you, but Liandry's is not available in Mission's shop.
Does feel that way. Okay. Wow, some really big trades already, and maybe not the trades that Hanabi would want.
Yeah, denies the minions, but RG did get the XP and found a favorable trade for himself. So definitely doesn't feel too bad.
Level 2 first, though. I like how we're just watching top lane rather than just putting the cam up. We know which lane likes to fight.
Yeah, but with an Ornn, it's a little bit less exciting.
Yep. Kendra might actually cross. No, he's going to go for a 3-camp mid. There's no cleanse, of course, on Mission.
Oh, Flash matched, and now Hana's in the area. Junjia!
Wow.
That is an early first blood, and now Mission's wanting to be more aggressive in this series, certainly not paying off, as that is the second time now that he's been found caught out of position. Really good coordination from PSG to find that one.
Yeah, really annoying there. And that's some of the reason that you see a lot of people when they play against Annie, they take Resolve second. They go second when unflinching to help with the poke, and then, of course, the tenacity. Because you see here, Mission reacted as soon as he could. But level 3 on Junjia already just does so much damage, even though Hana shows up. And while I think Mission probably could have respected the 3-camp, it feels like that was pretty unfortunate.
Yeah. And Hana, once again, turning up to a lane just as his laner dies.
Yep.
This guy's been having a hell of a time. I think importantly too, one thing I want to touch on is that Wako pretty much has been just going Doran's Blade this series, but now that he's against Zeri Braum, there is no real threat onto him, so he can just go the Cull and scale up a bit quicker. I'm surprised that Chris Carter didn't do the same, although he does get his first recall off and go for that Cull. It does feel to me like he could have just started with the Cull. Now, the mark will be denied. Hana being proactive, finding that one, so the first mark not available for Junjia. I wonder if he had a mark on Mission. I feel like it would have been weird for you to place the mark immediately on the mid laner.
I'm not too sure.
I don't believe I saw the animation, but I'm not entirely sure, of course.
Maple gets to reset, though, and he's now got a sizable item advantage over Mission. I don't know if Mission will be able to recall. Oh, maybe a gank onto Maple. He's trying to hold the wave, but he has the movement speed.
He does not have flash. He is likely to be going down here. He's trying to run away.
I think he
does get that
might
shield.
be-
Will the Bramble Smash be able to get it? Mission, in fact, walking forward.
Oh, no.
That is a disaster. And Maple throws up the thumb. His player cam, he's smiling, he's happy with himself. And bad times for DCG at the moment.
It's tragic, really. The flash invested from Hana. You really would want to pick up a kill, but Orianna just lacking the movement speed to chase down the Annie. I believe Annie has higher base movement speed as well. Could be wrong. But of course, with the boots on top of it, just makes it even harder. Submission, he gets a base, goes for the Amtome and the D-Ring, so lots of early game strength, but you've already fallen behind, which makes it much harder to really leverage that strength you have over your opponent. And this keeps happening to Mission, where he falls behind, and in spite of that, he ends up with a lead. But you just wonder what would happen if he didn't start every game dying to a gank. Looks like there will be a reset coming out of Maple. The wave looks favorable for Mission in mid, and bot lane, health bars are still fairly high, so not going to see too much. So maybe now, low mana on Orca.
Should be fine. Now, I'm not sure who I favor when it comes to this first dragon. Hana now will be backing. See what he picks up. Probably, okay, is headed towards a demonic embrace. And in theory, the Magpie should be a little bit stronger when it comes to those skirmishes. It does feel like maybe the power that you get through the bot side here of PSG, as well as obviously Jinji are picking up that first blood. Maybe they're going to be able to snag this one away. Just have higher tempo around the map.
Tibbs was used, but it's going to be hard for Mission to get here. Has to deal with clearing this wave, and I think this dragon should go over with that mid and bot pro, favoring the side of PSG. Hana smited the bear, but it didn't quite die. So now it gets to regen up.
Oh, how broken is that?
Can the bear eat honey fruit?
Probably not. Oh, the bear's back to
Yeah, that's
pretty
so
much
annoying.
full health.
Ooh.
Yeah, trade's going down bot, but it is DCG winning out on that one. Blade Caller won't connect onto Chris Carter, so he's completely fine as he's actually positioning pretty aggressively. Makes a lot of sense, a lot of cooldowns being used by that Xayah.
Looks like Mission reset again. He got himself the chapter. And one thing I will maybe say was a little strange is we did see Mission go for the magic boots, but again, a lot of the time versus Annie, you like to rush out the Merc Treads. So I'm wondering if perhaps there's another death in his future if he does get double flashed on again. We'll see. Should have enough vision around mid to... Oh, Hana, he's going to find him. Oh, so close.
That's always heartbreaking. Probably favored to win that as well. But now Jinji getting that back off, picks up the recurve bow, making his way towards what will inevitably be a Kraken Slayer here on this...
Kindred?
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine. We
I
got
was
there in the
looking
end.
at top.
The tops remained, I think you would say, relatively even, you know, despite the CS deficit. I think you're very happy with this state as on, as long as you don't fall too far behind. And Herald is up pretty soon. Definitely favor the Renekton around that, even despite the advantage picked up early for the Kindred. So I think PSG should just be content to invade this red, give away the Herald, and maybe even look for a dive bot after. And I like when teams are willing to do this. It feels like sometimes, oh, maybe they're not willing to do it. They're pathing towards Herald, which is a little surprising. I'm not sure they would win. They have chunked Mission out a lot, but the Tibbers have, of course, been used, and it feels like Hanmi is too strong in this fight. Let's see what happens. I think it's DCG favored, though.
Yeah, could be some big AoEs coming out of Ornn. Maybe can make the difference, and Herald's just going to reset. So I think PSG got exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, they managed to force him off it. I wonder how much of that is just this Tibbers. Feels like it single-handedly zoned Mission out. It's really, really annoying to deal with. Maybe now they will go back to it, though. Mission has TP, so he can base, come back with items and damage. And I think DCG really should want this fight. They're going to try and make it happen. Mission, what does he have? Got the blasting one, so more damage comes through. And this time, PSG, are they still going to fight it?
Oh, they're looking
no
for Orca
flash.
at least. They're not looking to fight the Rift Shield, but they're looking to take out this Braum. He's going to have to use everything. Does manage to get away from his life, though. Keeps the flash. That's pretty important, but Maple loses his.
Yeah, there was a lot of damage there that came out of Mission's Orianna. That does make things a little bit more difficult for Maple. Does not have the flash, and there are both flashes up for the DCG mid-jungle. So could die at some point. Despite that, though, it should be the bot side jungle that's claimed here for Jinjia, and Cascada might be forced off some waves bot. Looks like he is going to lose at least a little bit until Orca gets back down here. I think once Orca's here, they should be fine to 3v2, but wisely respecting. And this was something that a lot of bot laners got caught out by in the regular season. So glad to see he makes through this, despite losing some plates and some CS. He doesn't die, which is the big thing. Maybe.
In fact, he's
Getting
getting
aggressive.
aggressive. Does have ult, does have flash. Wako does as well, though.
I wonder if Hana just straight runs mid and flash W's Maple, because he does not have flash, and if they can kill mid, drop Herald. Mid's already on 3 plates, actually. Mission must have done all that work purely in the 1v1. So again, despite falling behind early, finds himself an advantage.
Oh.
Okay.
That's a big chunk. And it will be Tibbers going down this time. Won't be able to regen up.
I'm a little surprised they didn't just drop Herald right then and there. Because I think it probably is best to be used mid. Looks like they might do it this wave instead. Yep, it is dropped. Maple does need to be careful. I don't think he'll be dived. Mission, will he grab the gold? No, he does not. It all goes on to the Maokai, but Maokai's going AP at least. Dragon soon. I don't... Oh, Tibbers might be up for this. It's not the longest cooldown.
Yeah, I think importantly, despite Jinjia picking up that first blood, has actually only managed to amass himself 1 stack, which was on the most recent Scuttle Crab before this one. And so he isn't that accelerated. Obviously, a lot of the acceleration comes through. Flashes, Nature's Grass does come out. Maple being looked at. Lamb's Respite, though, is good here for Jinjia. But the Bramble Smash does secure the fact that we will see a death here coming from Maple in the mid lane. And now Mission, being the next target, does dodge away there from the call of the Forge God. Keeps himself nice and alive. Will be able to recall, get himself some health. But with that mid laner, the jungler, sorry, falling, Hana being dead, should be the Dragon now picked up by PSG, giving themselves this Hextech Dragon and steadily on their way to a soul win condition.
They are getting these very early. I do think that was misexecuted. I think it's probably, you need to hold the Ori ult until after the Maokai R has already started, because I don't think that Hana should have to flash W to catch up. So probably could have got that just with 1 flash invested. But unfortunately, it wasn't the cleanest execution. Ends up being a 1-for-1, and the Dragon picked up. And gold is still even, despite that. So
Lot of
we'll get another
plays.
look at this. I think Hana should just start the ult before Ori goes for the flash, because this looks really weird. And I think they did get a kill. So it wasn't the end of the world, and the TP was forced out. Picture in picture, though, there's a dive on mid.
There is.
Still no
Hanabi
flash.
is looking pretty low. Does manage to get himself out, but does he? Jinjia flashing forward is going to be able to secure himself up a 3rd kill in this game. We've got a 3-0 Kindred on our hands as the dive goes awry yet again for DCG. Trying to be a bit too proactive here in the mid lane. As Mission, 900 kills now in the PCS.
Pretty high. But it does look like that was another 2 forced, maybe, dive onto the mid lane, and really did not go well.
I have to see a replay because it feels weird that we came back and Hanabi's just in between the 2 mid towers.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he was trying to do something to punish Maple while he still didn't have flash, but I believe that time the Tippers was up, and he's going to take a lot of damage on the way to bot.
Yeah. He's pretty low now. Now, Maple, the target of aggression yet again. There is no Lamb's Respite, very long cooldown, and will be caught out there by Mission's Shockwave. But Orca is the one who picks up that shutdown. Despite all the damage coming through from Mission, he had to run away due to the tower shots, and Orca, unfortunately, left there picking up the gold.
Still, though, they did manage to break the mid tower, which is nice and early, and Arja, he does have flash, but he might just be too CC'd up here.
RJ's next on the chopping block, but Hana's getting pretty low here, and RJ's feeling pretty good about himself. This ult will come through, does not connect onto Hana, but he is certainly going the wrong way to be getting out of this as Bellow Breath secures the kill there. It is going to be Hana going down, RJ picking that one up, despite having the Thorn Mail, doing pretty well against those AP champs.
Yep. Big spike here, though, for Mission. He's got the Storks and the Luden, so he is really, really strong on this timing. Probably want to keep going for the fights, and it is unfortunate, of course, that Braum was the one that got that shut down before, but Honestly, having more gold in your Braum, while it's not where you'd want the gold to be, it's still okay. And have a look there
Tower plates,
at how that huge amount of tower plates, but despite that, the gold is not that far behind. It's about to extend a bit further as this top tower is picked up by Hanabi. But still, I think you've kept it close enough for PSG. Take a look at the gold. Hanabi's actually the one in the lead. Mission, though, not far behind. Because Chris Gardner's been doing pretty well for himself, considering that, remember, he was forced away from those bot waves while his team did the Herald. So pretty impressive that he's actually up gold. I'm not sure how he's managed that.
Flame's Respite now available for Jinjia in whichever fight breaks out next. It feels like with where everyone's positioned, this Rift Herald's inevitable. Level 10, both AD carries. They've also both completed their first items. And now I think in a team fight, you favor the Kraken Slayer. But obviously the static shift does pretty much confirm you will consistently have mid lane priority, which means Wako should be a little bit later to these roams. Will he try to defend this ward? Will not be able to do so. Skada pretty handily takes that out. Now, we do have both mid laners down the bot side. They both have teleport available to them. There is no flash available for Mission if he does choose to come, while Maple certainly has his available. They are late though. The Herald already down now to 5k health, and there is no ward in the pit, so they don't even see it. Now there will be. Jinjia not going to be able to pick it up, and there might be a fight after. In fact, there won't be. Just disengage coming through. Nice usage of that Braum ult as well as the Maokai ult to ensure there can't be an engage found. Does just get the teleport out of Maple. Mission holding his.
Yeah, should be able to get that bot tier 1. We'll have to back away after that, but I almost remember this exact same situation where Maple chose to match TP. He might need a TP out after this tower, though. I think he might be dead.
Mark's going on him. He cannot. But it's important. Are they going to be able to pick up this kill? Yes, they will. Jinjia needs to get some assists on here at least. Does. Picks himself up a mark.
I think he was pretty dead no matter what. Although DCG...
Oh, call the Forge Guard. It's going to be a 2v3 if, at best, but Chris Carter has been CC'd up, and RJ secures that kill. Chris Carter could not get away from there despite having the cleanse and flash. You cannot cleanse knockups, and RJ picking himself up a second in the game. And we're seeing pretty good macro in general from DCG, and then it falters a little bit.
Yeah. I think they could have got out from all that. I think the Mission after taking the tower probably should have TP'd. Even still, though, I think if Mission dies there but gets 2 flashes out, that's actually worth. I really don't think PSG needed to flash for that. And I also think PSG probably should have just delayed Mission's death so that he wasn't up for the Dragon. Ultimately, though, none of that ends up mattering because Kriskada gets picked mid. So DCG, I really think they had the better end of that, even despite Mission dying, and perhaps they still do because there is no flash on Annie, no flash on the Rel, used for basically no reason.
RJ has teleport, does not have ult though, and so this should just be the Dragon picked up for DCG, as you pointed out, despite giving over some kills in terms of tempo as well as pretty much everything else, able to pick up this Dragon.
Does get picked up, and that's definitely a nice pickup. Disarms that Dragon win condition, which is really nice. And I think that with that, DCG remain very competitive in this game. Ornn is starting to be a problem, though, especially because no one's really going to build to deal with him. It's going to be a long time getting through him in the team fights.
5 people down here in this bot side, and Maple alone is not able to walk up, of course, to this wave, and it's just going to be in tower found. It's traded back, but certainly less gold given over to PSG, as those inner towers are worth a considerable amount more. They're looking though, are they going to be able to get this mid tower? Doesn't seem like it, as obviously we see Mission walking up there.
Goal difference at the start was a bit shaky, but now has steadily been in DCG's favor for quite some time. But need to convert it into some more team fight wins. Despite being down kills, they are up in gold, mainly off all those tower plates and towers themselves that they've picked up. 5 towers to 1 here. Wako, I think he'll be looking to get 2 items before that next Dragon. That's going to be a big spike for him. I think also soon Jinjia is going to turn into a pretty credible carry threat.
Definitely. Triforce almost online for him. That's a scary moment of time. Now, importantly, I think I saw just before that we do have Jinjia sitting on 3 stacks. And 4 really is that break point where you get that extra range and you become a whole lot more annoying to deal with. You're a lot safer, can output damage from a lot further away. But control over the Rift, for the most part, is in control by DCG. And I will say, the team fight comp that comes through from PSG, they can just win it through that. If they get a good flank coming through from Maple or a nice ult from Arja, assuming Braum shield's down, will feel like they do have the favor in those team fights.
For sure. And I think this game feels the most playable out of all of them for DCG, just because game 1, the comp was kind of a wash. Game 2, comps were relatively even, but they fell so far behind and then had to crawl it back. But this is the first time that I think they both have a playable comp and they have a lead, even though it's slight. So we'll have to see if they're able to convert that into their first win in their series, or if PSG are just going to be able to clean this one up. Looking onto Hanabi, but shouldn't be a viable target. He's just a bit too tanky. Takes a bit too much time. And Baron spawning soon means that DCG, they could look at that if too much is committed onto that bot side. Shattered Flame here, now for Mission, as well as the Sterex for Hanabi. Will Maple get this Rylai's before the next fight? He should. I don't think he's too far away from it. And Wako needs those 2 items, because 2 items have already come through for Kushkrat. Okay, he's got it now. The Navori completed there for Wako. Big spike ahead of this next dragon. I think next drag will be a big one. Should be a big team fight. Wonder how much gold Junjia's on.
I imagine.
He gets a mark off this.
Oh, nice. Okay, that means he's at 4. Now being at 4 marks. Extra range. This Kindred just got a lot scarier. Baron being started by the side of DCG, and I imagine PSG are privy to it.
This is a DCG classic now.
Yeah, they're just going for the 20-minute Baron off nothing. Maple on the bot side has teleport available to him.
Are they just going to flip it? I think they might.
They do have Kindred, which makes flipping it a little bit Kindred favored due to Lamb's Respite. It was just DCG getting that teleport out of Maple. And now, somewhat disengaging, somewhat trading. But all things considered, the Baron was stopped and Maple does lose his teleport. So I think good macro in this game, really, from DCG.
Definitely get that TP out. And they still have a strong teamfight comp, so they don't really have to go back to split push if they don't want to. Peng's back onto the Baron. They might just clear it out. Not sure if they'll actually start it up.
Yeah, Junjia is in the waiting wings.
Now they're heading it again.
Yeah.
This is seen, though, by PSG, so they get to see very early and they can react.
Yeah, and now Braum shield, very important here. Baron down to half HP. DCG obviously hitting away at that. Maple looking, he's sped up, and here comes the Ornhorn. Can't be blocked by this Braum. Actually doesn't even use it. The Nature's Grass stops it. Lamb's Respite comes through. There is no smite for Hana. As soon as it ends, it's going to be picked up by Junjia. And it is. It's traded for his life, but the Baron being picked up means all PSG have to do now is disengage. And fantastic timing on Lamb's Respite means Hana's smite will go wide. And Junjia has the freest smite of his career.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mind game as well. You know, I do smite early before the Lamb's Respite, or do you think that maybe it won't come out in time? It's hard. Ultimately, I think this is still pretty even, all things considered. It's slight goal given to PSG, but DCG grabbed themselves another drag. Question mainly about how much PSG can get done with this Baron, because they should have the tempo advantage. DCG have not yet reset, so they should be able to knock down a couple towers. There is also the Rylai's now from Maple. We're going to get a replay of it. So I guess Hana did just smite. Yeah. You maybe think that they could have bursted it here while he was in Nature's Grasp, but they didn't quite have enough, and that was very, very close. And unfortunately, no way to get Junjia out of the pit. So it's pretty easy to grab this free smite here, especially if Baron heals up a bit so it doesn't just get one shot by a random piece of damage. And Maple, he has flash.
Oh, he looks for the flash. He's going to find it here. Orca is in trouble, but that shield doing pretty big work. Doing God's work there in that one. DCG managed to survive. They're all very low, though, so this should mean that some objectives are found from PSG. And I think Orca, really the unsung hero there.
Objectives, yeah, they will fall, but I think the fact that they managed to live is pretty incredible. They still had to use a lot, though. Both sums for Cruscata and, of course, the flash for Mission. Which can't be understated, but that might be it for the Baron for PSG. They still have a full minute, but I think it's hard to find any more objectives with that.
Junjia snag himself away another camp. Adds to the total of his marks, I believe. Should be now Sitting at 5, in fact, is. But yeah, I think Baron power play, pretty underwhelming. You did lose Jinji at the very beginning of it, but that could have turned into a whole lot more off of missions engage. I do want to say that Orca had pretty phenomenal usage of his Braum abilities to keep Mission alive and Chris Carter alive in that instance. Finding an immense amount of value out of this Braum pick.
For sure. And Maple, without Flash for some time, is going to find difficulty getting aggressive. I think it was Woody's Flash used as well. Those cooldowns are down. But of course, the flashes are missing from DCG as well. Mission, he's on a wide flank, and Arja's behind him. I wonder if they know. This could be a good time for Arja to engage if he finds it, because there's no flash on the DCG carriers. They need to be really careful here. They don't know about Arja.
There is no Braum shield to dodge this, and Mission getting stunned up, getting knocked up, and Maple's here. Mission might not be long for the world as this Ornn is just trying to wail in on him, but for now at least there are no deaths coming through, and Mission still looking for a flank in this one, but Tibbers doing a pretty good job of providing safety around that flank, and it will ultimately result in a whole lot of nothing, but some ults traded. Obviously Nature's Grasp going down, as well as that Dominus.
Flash used from Arja though.
Yeah.
And you thought, or at least I thought, the Mission was pretty much dead there, caught up with no flash, but they managed to peel him off once again. Let's see how it happened, because Arja, he's got the longest flank in history. It comes below Mission, and there's no Braum near him, so it was just up to Hana to keep his mid laner alive. The flash knock-up as well. Maple, did he miss the ult? I think he did.
I think he did.
Oh, that is tragic.
And everyone else wasn't able to get there. The Nature's Grasp keeping them stunned up. Were not able to get over to RJ to follow up on his damage. And now RJ, in fact, being looked at. Does not have flash, yeah. And he should just be going down. There's 4 members just absolutely annihilating him. But it's a shutdown. Shutdown does go over to Hanabi. Now, 4 members strong of DCG. One thing they've done good in this game is just staying as a strong 4-man unit. But Maple looking for Chris Carter. Stays in that box, and it's going to be Jinjia picking that one up. Uses that Lamb's Respite, and now DCG, despite having the favor in terms of members before the fight, it's now all going pear-shaped as PSG are forcing them away from any objectives. Ultimately, all things said and done, it's a 1-for-1 trade. But man, what is even going on anymore?
Crazy game. It really is. Especially with all these sums down, just plays being made time and time again. Another Dragon, though, spawning in 50 more seconds, and it's not the 4th drag win condition for either of them.
I have to say, I feel a little bit like this game is just a Wako ticking time bomb.
True, he's ready to pop off.
He's slowly but quietly built himself up to 300 CS. 0-0-1. He's feeling pretty strong. And it was just RJ face checking Hanabi, and the rest of the team collapsed on him.
Yeah, it was caught a bit too far up. Did not have the flash, so no way out. Importantly, I believe Mission ulted for this. Yeah, he did. So we'll not have it for the upcoming team fight. I think despite that, DCG would normally win, but they don't actually check this bush, and Maple manages to sneak in, and so even without flash, he's able to get access to Cruscata, which shouldn't normally happen. I think Hanabi should definitely check this, but they disrespect, punished in a big way as Jinjia comes through and just last hits him. Predator Orca once again blocks up a lot of damage here.
Yeah, I'd love to see Orca's damage mitigated stat after this game, because it's got to be quite a lot. Coming back to live though, PSG are going to pick themselves up that 3rd Dragon, and Baron now on the cards. It is spawning. We are likely to have a fight here. It's been a relatively... it's not even been a quiet game. There's just been a whole lot of things where not a whole lot of kills have happened.
Yeah, a lot of fighting, not a lot of dying. Mission, he completes the Void Staff, which is pretty crucial. That Ornn has so much MR.
He's teleported on in now, Ornn being at the front line. There's no real way for PSG to force Braum to use his shield, outside of maybe Annie engage, but it does feel hard for RG to know exactly when to use that Call of the Forge God. Jinjia getting stunned up here, knocked up as well from Orca, and RG going forward does find a knock up as well there, but Nature's Grass coming out means PSG are just going to back away. There's a big cooldown though, and now PSG walking towards this Baron, getting themselves some control over the river. Call of the Forge God does come through. Ornn should block this up, in fact he will, but he is knocked up. Does get away, and it was Featherstorm used as well by Wako to just try and find additional damage, but with those massive cooldowns down, it now feels like DCG have their way to get back in and get their vision back.
Yep, Mission did use Flash there, though.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if he needed to. Honestly, just couldn't tell. There was a lot going on, and he probably couldn't tell either. I wonder, do they just look at this Baron with those cooldowns down? Because I think you could. Mission, oh, be careful.
Mission's walked on in. He's strolled himself into an any ult, and he will be taken out. Junjia being the one that collects the gold from that, and your Orianna now down. So much of your team's damage and team fighting capability means that now PSG feel pretty happy to just hit this Baron. Hanabi will have that excited blast plant here to try and find Junjia or perhaps Wako, who does not have Featherstorm. Pops a Dominus, is in the middle of the team now, using that Q, but Wako's staying pretty safe. It should just be this Croc going down, but the Lamb's Respite means that he doesn't, but it also keeps Junjia alive. And now this Croc's getting so much done, he's going into that GA. There is still Wako who gets caught by this Nature's Grasp, and Cascada finding a lot of damage for himself. There is no jungle available here for the side of PSG, and luckily, in the nick of time, the Baron starts regenerating health, as everyone is going to have to recall and get their health back.
Somehow, some way, DCG, they keep doing it. They find the 4v5 team fight. You wouldn't call it a win, but, well, maybe you would. I mean, they didn't come out on top in terms of numbers, but they stopped the Baron. And that's crazy, because I think that sort of fight, the reason they were able to win it was because those big cooldowns were missing. So imagine if you had your mid laner alive on top of all that. Probably could have just done the Baron before, and maybe still can't, because Junjia is dead. And while the cooldowns are back up for PSG, it is a 4v5 and there's no rel ult. A lot of sums missing, though. I think PSG... Is Maple going to TP in? He does. So they want to try stop this.
Junjia's running. It's a 4v5 again.
I think DCG should win this.
This time it's a 4v5 the other way. There is no Braum to stop the potential Ornn engage, but Maple, in fact, looking. He's getting this Zeri so low. Sorry, it's actually the Orianna, and the Orianna has gone down. Wako, though, caught by the Winter's Bite. He's trying to keep himself alive and safe. He is free hitting for now. That Sapling doing a considerable amount of damage as RZ finds a knock-up. Blade Caller will secure that kill. Hanabi now looking for Junjia, but you do not have the damage. And Wako picks himself up a second. Now Cascada on the back end is trying to run away, but you're running into Junjia on this Kindred. Hana, though, may have just turned it around for him, having a good game for himself again, but the double knock-up here from both Woody and RG confirms that Cascada will be going down on the Zeri. Hana proccing that phase rush, does manage to get himself out, but ultimately 4 of those Barons do go down. It's only Hana left alive with it, and the ticking time bomb might have just come off because we had a 6,000 damage team fight coming out of Wako.
There was a lot of damage. Hana really keeping it in for them. 5,000 damage of his own put up, and wow. Mission, he was taken out early. He was flashed on. He does not have the Merc Treads, which is, again, a lot of people, they go either unflinching for the tenacity or the Merc Treads into the Annie. And you can see why. The chain CC comes through and the Ori didn't even have time to get the ult off. Tried at the end, but it wasn't in time. And while Maple went down, I think getting rid of the Ori is job done for you. And Wako, he went big in this team fight. Lots of damage to deal and not a lot of threats left available to him, especially once Hanabi commits. But wow, I mean, the fact that this game is still this close is insane. Last 2 games feels like pretty much any fight could have been anyone's victory. And Hana getting out here at the end as well. This guy is phenomenal on the Maokai. He really is.
Yeah, this guy's my series MVP, even if they do get 3-0'd. I think at this stage, though, it does look likely that maybe DCG do not have what it takes. One of the most exciting games from spring was DCG versus PSG, and it's because it got to this late stage. We got to see Cascada go up against Wako in the late game team fights. And we're back at it. We get to see it again here. Maple sitting on that enhanced blast plant, looking for an angle onto Mission. He might have just found one, though. Hanabi spots him out. And now this Dragon Soul getting very low, and it's going to be Wako who confirms that. And now the additional help here, the health, the shields, and also the tenacity that comes through from this Drake even. Feels pretty good. Shield used early, so that means the Call of the Forge God can be used by RG. Finds it to knock up onto 2, but there is no follow-up. Woody on the backside getting stunned up by Hana, and so much damage coming down onto this Maokai, who's limping away to the wrong side of the map. We've swapped places here. PSG going towards the blue side, and DCG going towards the red side. Mission trying to zone people away. Does have his Shockwave available to him. It is ultimately, though, a 4v5 essentially, because Hanabi is on the flank, but Woody finds a really nice Magnet Storm. Very low health bars. Mission so low. Will he get the ult off? He does not. And Junjia now, and the rest of PSG herding both Hana and Cascada away from their base and towards the waiting arms of these members. Junjia should likely pick up Hana here, although Hana actually gets himself out for now. Gets the flash away. Junjia has to flash, and he might just be going down. Lamb's Respite used. Is not getting the slow here. Does survive, and the anti-Tibbers goes wide, but Wako pulls up from the mid lane to secure that one, and teleport's coming through now. It's only Hana. Hana has it all to do, and this guy's had the world on his shoulders already this series, but he has a whole lot left to prove, as this Maokai is going up against 5 strong of PSG.
Can he hold it? I don't think he can.
Mission 9
There's
seconds.
Nature's Grasp. Yeah, and he has the ulti. I mean, maybe they just give up an inhib. I think that... Does this game go on? Let's see how committed they are. I think they want to play for the end. They do. Nature's Grasp,
Nature's Grasp out early, and Mission's not there to follow up with his ult, which could be important. The minion wave now hitting. There is no Baron wave, though, so Mission should be able to clear this out, and we go again, baby.
This is just an insane game.
This whole series.
It was. You know, this game and the last game have felt so, so close.
And I honestly, like, not often you think that the mostly tank Maokai has been out overperforming, but by God, he has this game.
This was a really creative angle found by Woody. Not often that you see the sides completely flipped, but importantly, once again, Mission goes down without even being able to ulti, which is big, right? That's a lot of his damage missing. Tries to get it off, does not get it in time. And how does Hana keep getting out of these situations? He looks like he's just dead to rights time and time again. Somehow manages it. Importantly, no stopwatch here for Mission. QSS for Wako as well. It's going to be really hard to take them out. And I think we're getting to the point where Wako might just 1v9 the next fight. He's so far ahead. Feels virtually unkillable. What is... Okay, never mind. Mission had a Giant's Belt for a moment, but he sold it. Or he refunded it, I mean.
Late game, Wako Zaya. I'm for it.
It's a treat.
What
Could be a Wako
Cascada do?
Penta next fight.
It could be. Cascada, though, definitely aiming to prove himself. Very far behind in terms of the items. But Zeri can offload an insane amount of damage given the right circumstances. But the right circumstances might not be these ones. Although Tibbers is now down. Hanabi does get away.
Wako, though.
He's just running forward. Oh, cancels a couple of autos. Nature's Grasp does come out, and Arj's going to tank that one up for the rest of the boys. And teleport coming through.
The fight
Mission
split.
and the rest of the team. Okay, nice Blade Caller will root up the members there of DCG. Orca and Hanabi not able to find their angle. And Woody on a flank, but does get spotted out by Hanabi's sweeper. It's now the Baron being looked at. There is no Tibbers. There is no Nature's Grasp,
so low,
though. Okay, this Baron's not long for the world. Maple looking for an angle. The Baron is claimed now by PSG, and a Shockwave's found. Lamb's Respite comes out as Hanabi's in the middle of everyone. Cascada's trying to do the damage. Hanabi's trying to dissuade any damage from coming through, but Wako's untouched. Wako is untouched currently. Woody manages to survive, and Wako's picked up too. Wako has stayed untouched the whole team fight. They've taken out 4, they've taken the Baron, and now they're headed towards the Nexus for the clean sweep in this series.
Finally, after all that, it will be the 3-0 going the way of PSG. They were pushed pretty hard in games 2 and 3, but at the end of the day, they're just a bit too strong, and they will clean it up. After all that, and man, while it was a 3-0, I think Game 2 and Game 3 was so close for so long. Wow. We were kind of expecting, you know, a somewhat one-sided series, but I think DCG actually fought back.
Yeah, I don't even think... This was obviously a 3-0, but it wasn't a one-sided series by any means. Game 2, Game 3 really were anyone's games. I mean, I really want to skip past a bit of the small talk and ask you, because MVP for that one, I think it has to go to Wako just through consistency. But I feel like Hana has been so robbed in those last 2 games.
Yeah, it's sad because Hana, he probably should have picked up MVP of the series if they'd managed to win. And I mean, man, he really 1v9. I think you're right. Wako probably gets it for consistency. I think engages from the rest of them were, you know, all
sketchy.
Kind of... Yeah, I mean, there were some that were really good. There's some anti-ults missed here and there. Some really good anti-ults, you know, so it's hard to say. What I will say, though, something I'm a bit sad about, is I feel like, okay, Mission, he's such a good player, but he's so stubborn. I really wish he wouldn't just build the exact same build every game, because I think, this game, if you just go the Merc Treads, perhaps, you go the Leandries, I think things would be really different, right? I think the fights are close enough that itemization, despite the play, could be the difference maker, and it frustrates me because I think, and also he dies to a gank every game. I feel he's so close to being just so good, and I love watching him lane, but I hate how he just refuses to fix these.
Yeah, it feels like there's a mission build Leandri's challenge impossible. Because I don't think, have you ever seen him? He might have built it on a Zir.
I was thinking about that, but I think his big DPM game, he built Crown.
Yeah, he built Crown, he did. But I'm not sure, because from my memory, I don't think I've ever seen mission build Leandri. Maybe last split.
Yeah,
maybe
last
split.
Have, but I don't remember either.
Yeah, I think this guy is pretty stuck in his ways.
He's allergic to good itemization.
He is. He sees it on, he sees a rally, he's like, perfect Luden's game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the majority of the game, he was just throwing Qs at the On, who built predominantly magic resist, and it wasn't really finding a whole lot. And I think that has to be a talking point. While we kind of clowning on it a little bit, when you're going into these future playoff series, after you have come off against this loss, and ultimately Mission looked pretty weak, I will say. I don't think he looked particularly good. He looked okay in game number 2, maybe despite that last-minute teleport, recall, which we don't really know about that well. But it feels like there is a huge difference when you itemize correctly versus when you don't. Because again, if you're landing those sort of Q pokes onto the Ornn when you have Leandries, you're going to chunk them a whole lot more than when you just have the Ludens proc for 60 damage.
Yeah. I think as well, there were a couple deaths that if he had any form of tenacity, even in the runes, would have probably kept him alive. And there were probably a couple more deaths where Orca had to work so hard to keep him alive that maybe it just could have been made a bit easier. And I don't know, I always find itemization something that's kind of weird to talk about, because on one hand, if you have the better gameplay, you do just win, right? But at the same time, the reason it feels bad is because it's so easy to fix in a way. It's very simple just to build, or I suppose not simple, but it is. If you can pick the right items, it's not like you have to change your gameplay in a big way, and it can affect the game in a big way.
Yeah, certainly. I think even more that even if he does go down and some of those times that Merc Treads could have saved him, having the Merc Treads would have meant maybe he got his Shockwave off, which could have been the difference maker, because how many fights did we see where there were people limping away on like 100 HP, 200 HP, that an Orianna ult would have absolutely cleaned up had it have happened, but ultimately we didn't really see it. And it's a shame, because Mission is generally so good. And I think when you see him lane up against Maple, I think specifically, you do see his weaknesses exploited, both in the itemization and his over-aggression when it comes to that lane phase.
Yeah, Jajir definitely likes to punish him with the ganks. I want to zoom out a bit because obviously DCG will be falling down, but I think that with the games they put up against PSG, it's hard to say, was this a PSG that just wasn't as clean as they normally were, or did DCG really just push them to the limit? Because I would say this doesn't look like regular season PSG, but I mean, if this is actual DCG from here on out, I would not be surprised at all if they end up coming, back to the top 4, top 3.
Yeah, see, I wonder, because it feels like Hana really stepped it up in this series. And even a player like that, while not on the most impactful champion of all time, being the Maokai, it certainly has its impact when it comes around objectives, but sort of in those team fights, you put out your Nature's Grass, throw some saplings, and you don't have a whole lot more to say. It does feel like he stepped up a lot. And I also want to say that Orca played a pretty good series for himself as well. There wasn't even really a clear issue. I guess Mission's early laning, where he was getting caught out, I think twice. 2 games, I think he got caught out early on in the game. And then obviously game 2, the disaster that was top lane. It really felt like those were why PSG won. And it is akin to them, because they see something and they punish it, and they punish it really well. The cohesion around team fightings, though, did look like it's lacking. But again, I don't know if it's them lacking or DCG stepping up, as you kind of said. But what I will say is sort of how this game went makes me very, very excited for PSG versus Beyond, because I think Wako had a pretty good series for himself, other than maybe the Zeri game. It was a bit of a quiet one, but I mean, this Xayah performance was quite akin to the likes of Betty, where Betty often doesn't have the most dominating early game. He kind of, you'll see him sitting there 0-0-3, and it's like, well, we've hit 35 minutes and he's about to take over. And Wako certainly did that this game, and I think that reminds me of Spring Wako, which will be an absolute pleasure to see up against Summer Betty.
It will. It will be really good to see. And I think that's a series that I would expect to go the distance. I think that could very well be our first 5-game series. But Let's take a look at the replay. And I actually think this was a mistake from PSG. I think that you want to delay Mission's base so that he's not alive for the drag. And I also think he is dead no matter what. You don't need to invest 2 flashes for that. But anyway, it happened. This was a big mistake from Cruscata, though. Getting caught out here after Mission had already died on bot lane was big. And it meant that they had really slow temp on the drag. I think they still ultimately ended up getting it. But so much just random deaths and sums and everything burned. Definitely wasn't the cleanest game. And which fight was this?
Oh, I don't know. There were so many.
We're lost.
I think this is where they get the soul.
Okay, yeah, they get the soul. They move forward. This is where they ended up, I think, split into 2 halves. And
on the wrong side of the map.
I think this wouldn't have been too bad if they'd, I guess if they'd marked Woody. I'm not too sure what happened to Hana. Let's see. So, Ornot was used. Everything's looking fine at this point. They see Woody on the bot side of the fight. Tibbers is used. Hana manages to get out. Even this, okay, you don't really want to be here, but I think you can exit to top jungle. But I think it's kind of weird that they decide to stay in mid. I guess they want to clear this wave so they can't just run down mid. But now, look at the angles that PSG are finding, and Hanabi is recalling, I guess, for a TP, but then cancels it. And I think because they've left these angles open, they find the engage, and Mission here, he can't get the stopwatch off in time before he's taken so much damage, and then the ult, of course, he's too low. And I think this was a pretty big turning point. I mean, it was hard. There were so many turning points in this game where one team or the other could have snowballed to the lead, but I think this was starting to be the point where PSG were in full control. And Hana, once again, he gets out somehow. Look at him go.
Yeah. Speed racer. Doesn't manage to get out.
Yeah, and Cruscata, I think he went down here, right? To Wako, maybe?
Oh, yeah, he does. Wako turns up. We also didn't see, somewhere in that fight, Hanabi died. But we didn't get to see that. And Wako was topping the damage tarts. I don't even think that's too surprising. I mean, you didn't really see him for the most part of the game, but oftentimes Zaya is just sitting there, hitting those blade callers and doing a lot of damage despite not really seeing it. It's really when you get those massive ripbacks where you notice it. But Wako played pretty perfectly, I think, in this game. Maybe that one instance where he used the Feather Storm and they lost Ornot Feather Storm, and inevitably the Baron was maybe the one critique I'd have for him, but certainly should be the MVP for this game. Now, entire series MVP, who do you think that goes to? Because it almost feels like RJ might be the correct pick for me.
I was thinking RJ too. It is hard to tell, though. I'm not even sure. Like, maybe you could give it to Woody just for, well, this game and maybe the series as well. He found some really good engages. I think this one is also a pretty hard one to call.
Yeah.
Because the way PSG play, it's not normally off like the Game 2 RJ performance, right? It is more of a well-rounded thing. So I'm not too sure even who I'd give series MVP to even now.
Yeah. It was Woody who picks up the game MVP. I think this is fair enough. He found some pretty good angles for himself. Even the ones that didn't result in many kills did result in a lot of low health bars. And you see it there, 3-man Magnet Storm. And just doing a good job of peeling for the boys.
He is. Orca as well, though. He played so well on the Braum.
He did.
A lot of the time, I think you see Braum not that useful, to be honest. Like, I always think that it's a lot simpler, I guess, to have that engaged support than it is to have the Braum. But if you find value with the Braum, it looks pretty incredible.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times Orca actually saved that game from just being broken completely over. I mean, that one instance in mid lane where Maple flashed forward Tibbers, I think that's the one that sticks out of my mind because it almost looked like certainty that Mission and Cruscata would go down, but Braum probably mitigated, like, I would say near 3,000 damage in that fight between Annie, between Wako, and obviously all the other damage coming through. So I think very impressive performance by Orca. And I want to say Hana as well. I think those were really the two players when you look at DCG and think, oh yeah, they had a very good series for themselves despite it being 0-3.
For sure, yeah. I think it just leaves a lot to be desired really for those DCG carries. I think that next time around, hopefully they will do better. And I mean, even when you saw that damage graph, right? I don't know if you saw, but Mission was really low damage, and I think that's pretty unacceptable given how much he was played around, right? Like, they were flashing, double flashing on Maple, they were diving in with Renekton. Even if it didn't work out, there was a lot of pressure put towards him, and it just didn't translate.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a concern, because again, it feels like the damage would have been higher just by building the Undries alone.
That's true.
And even maybe just the Mercs. I mean, it feels like the Sorks are also just, out of the three sort of boots you can buy on Orianna.
I do feel like the worst
It feels like
ones.
they're the worst of them, because at least if you go for the Lucidity boots, you're able to use more abilities, which ends up doing more damage than the Sorks do. Obviously, the big Shockwave won't do as much damage, but did he really find any of those? Not really. I didn't notice any shockwave in that game that I was like, wow, that was impressive. It was kind of just these ones off on the side. And again, I'm starting to have questions actually around Missions Orianna, because I think at this stage it's had 2 wins and something like 5 losses. And at that stage, you have to wonder, like, yes, often he finds himself a lead, but he's not finding wins on it. He found early wins in the season, back in weeks 1 and 2, but now he's not really finding the same success. So maybe something else. I mean, this Victor has looked very good in the past. His control mages in general look very good, and it feels like maybe Orianna's not the one that suits him most in the meta currently.
Yeah, and they were actually hovering Talia, so maybe they could have tried that instead.
Yeah, definitely. But we are going to go to a break now. Once we do come back, it is going to be an interview we have with Nash, and it looks like RG will be the interviewee, so stick around and look forward to that.
Welcome to our post-game interview, joining by PSG 阿志。欢迎来到我们的赛后采访。那我们今天邀请到的是 PSG 的阿志，跟大家打个招呼。
Hello， 大家好，我是 PSG 上路阿志。
So first question, in Game 1 and Game 3, you won in clean fashion, but that Game 2 was such a clown fiesta. What exactly happened in Game 2? 其实第1场跟第3场你们都算赢得还算稳定，但是第2场比赛就真的是一场大乱斗。那第2场到底发生了什么事？
因为第2场的话，前面拿到巨大优势嘛，所以可能队伍就比较嗨一点的起来，所以后面就打得比较乱。
So in Game 2, I think we have a massive lead in early game, and that makes us a little bit cocky and too high. Our tension gets too high, so we made a lot of silly mistake. Second question, and speaking of Game 2, Aatrox is considered to be an OP pick in 13-14, but your Gwen destroyed Hanabi's Aatrox in laning phase. Talk me through this matchup. 讲到第2场比赛嘛，那你们第2场比赛开输了2-4。你第2场比赛是拿出了关候选来打，而且把他现场打爆了。你觉得这个对局的走向大概长怎么样？
这个对局的话，就是因为关前面带点燃的话就是很强嘛，所以然后剑魔前面很弱，所以要尽可能在前面的话打出优势。
Gwen with Ignite is really strong in laning phase, and Aatrox in the opposite is pretty weak in laning phase. So I have to punish him big in laning phase. I managed to do that. And next question, you're gonna face BYG in upper bracket final. How do you think about them? 再下一个问题就是你们在接下来的对局就是要对上 BYG 在胜部决赛。那你对 BYG 有什么看法？
BYG 的话，我觉得没意外的话3-0吧。
Okay, so the only words I want to tell them is I think it will be a easy 3-0. Okay, and before I let you go, any words for your PSG fans? 那在让你走之前，我们要问最后一个问题，就是你有什么话想要对你的粉丝说的吗？
就是感谢粉丝们的支持吧，我们会进入世界赛，并打出好成绩。
Thanks for cheering for us, and we will make sure we go to Worlds and have good grades. That's it. Thank you for joining once again, and let's go back to our caster desk. 再次感谢接受我们的采访，我们把时间交还给主播台喽。
Thank you very much for that, Nash. I think my biggest takeaways from that interview was one, Game 2 was a clown fiesta. And then number 3, BYG going to be a 3-0 for PSG.
Yeah. No, I don't see it actually. Now, did he say that Arja was the series MVP?
I believe,
Or does that just want the
He didn't
interview
say
means?
it this time, but oftentimes that's what it means.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know.
I mean, honestly,
could see it.
I could absolutely see it too. I think he played probably the most consistently out of everyone.
yeah.
Maybe Junji. I don't think. Well, that one Rel play where he just decided to stand still. Was
you
a
get
bit
that on the big
egregious.
jobs.
You certainly do. But it is going to be PSG who take it 3-0, and I think it was not the most convincing fashion, but
No,
they did get
they
it
got
done.
the dub.
Yeah, and ultimately what matters is the dub, and maybe some of those mistakes they had around those team fights and whatnot can be cleaned up ahead of their game with BYG, which I think is a very exciting matchup to look forward to, because especially Arja coming off this hot, going up against the Kai, that feels like maybe PSG favored, but ultimately the Wako vs Betty matchup is just so exciting to watch.
And I think the interesting thing around that will be the Kai'Sa, right? Because Betty versus J-Team got Kai'Sa 3 times. I really don't think he's going to get that versus PSG, especially considering, in the regular season, that one game where he went 14-0 or something.
Yeah.
Feel like that won't happen again. But of course, it was a 3-0 today for this side of PSG. And I believe so far, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've seen every team that's lose pick blue side. I don't think we've ever seen a single red side pick.
We have not.
No.
And so red side is currently holding a far superior win rate. It's not even close. I mean, we've probably seen maybe at best like 3 blue side wins. Pretty surprising, all things considered, I guess. But this is your playoff brackets. Obviously, coming into next week, we will first of all be taking a look at that lower bracket. It will be the Team Bliss versus CFO match coming up first. And then following on that, I believe Saturday night, should be Chiefs versus Frank. And those are exciting. I mean, it's always fun to watch sort of the LCO come over here and show us what they've got. And now this split, obviously, not having all of their games in the 1 week means they've had another week to get those scrims in, to get a lot of practice, and to also read what their opponent does, because coming over from a different region, it's pretty hard to scout for a game immediately after you just lost your last game. And so it feels like maybe they'll be able to put up a better performance in their following week. And I think, especially the Chiefs, they had some solid foundations on being able to pick up a win. And I almost expect them to be able to at least pick up 1, if not 2, and maybe even take the series ultimately up against Frank, because Frank haven't been looking the hottest, and in their tiebreaker against CFO, did look once again pretty weak, and maybe that's just CFO finally leveling up to where we expect them to be. But I do have my concerns for Team Bliss on the other side, though, because CFO, if they are in summer form at least, they will be very dominating, and Chelsea has been looking pretty phenomenal. But that will be a story and a tale for next week. For this week, we are done, but you do have Walk the Line to, of course, listen to and enjoy, and stick around for next week where we find out the more about our playoffs.